Good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, February 26th. We're going to open up the planning board meeting to the Board of Architectural Review. So what we'll do is we'll skip over this public hearing for Austin Land, and we'll handle that during the planning board session. So I'm going to open up the BAR first. First application is 12-1749 Spring Street.
JB, this will be the BAR application.
Yes.
Fine, thanks.
Okay. I think we, since the last time, good evening, we have submitted some minor changes to the floor plan, but the elevations and the architectural kind of remain the same since the last time. Starting from the,
January?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry, we don't have the color. We do have some color here, but
I think so, then you get color.
what we have done is we have shown 47 and 49 together there to see how kind of the architecture work proceeding from the architecture from the one building following to into the this next building. We have downstairs going to be retail, and we have the apartments on the top. It's going to be the stock on the roof, similar as to this side. And the windows that we see here, there is a 3-foot recess and the indentation on the side of the property. And we're trying to work with architecture, and also because of code, we wanted to have some windows and light on that side. And I think the last time I had asked, they had asked us about elevation from the interior side, which is probably never seen, but it's between the two buildings, and we also have that as well.
Which is that?
The one in the,
That's
yeah.
what is facing the existing
Yeah.
building? Okay.
I believe that the last time we were in front of the board, I mean, there was not much architectural-wise, there were not that many questions. It was more planning, and we're waiting for zoning.
Jamie, is this a EFIS or
It's gonna
finish,
be
or is this going to be like a true stucco finish?
true stucco finish. That's what we anticipate already.
Any questions from everybody on the board? Or?
I just want to understand again, so the windows of the existing property, the separation between the two buildings is 6 feet or 8 feet?
It's, I believe, let me get my glasses.
This is the existing, this
Right.
is the proposed. This is also on the planning board, so probably what we do is we would
Yeah.
adjourn this, look at site plan, and we'll look at if we're ready to vote.
Right, there is, to answer your question, there is about, it's 7 feet difference between the two buildings, and because there are windows coming out, so we were trying to maintain that, so wherever there was a bay in the existing building, we tried to do a void in that building to maintain that 7 feet difference.
You don't have two windows looking at each other?
What we did is the windows that they're looking at each other, if you want to say that, those are privacy windows. We should use them to bring light into the living area and for.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Are you going to do some kind of illumination down this trench here, the alley here, so that it
Yes.
will be illuminated at
Yes.
night?
For security reasons, yeah.
Right, and
Safety.
is it going to be, a gate or anything so people can't use that area? Or
We haven't
or-
thought about a gate, but that sounds like something that. could be a
I'm
gate.
thinking just in terms of
Yes.
safety
Mhm.
and unwanted use, that it's
Yes.
illuminated, of course, also so people don't get light into their apartments, but at least illuminated down so it's obvious that it's not a dark alley.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll provide the gate, I'm sorry, I guess if we put a gate in the front, we'll also have to put a gate in the back so nobody from the
Right,
back will walk
right.
into the
Right.
back.
Lighting on the front of the building, is there anything to be soffit lighting, any kind of lighting that would project
Lighting
out?
is
or-
gonna be on the
Very much
source.
the same, similar with the other building, with the cast iron.
Can you please
I'm sorry.
state your name for the record?
I'm sorry.
No problem.
My name is Pedro Silva, 125 Main Street. That's the office. The lighting is going to be very much similar with the other building next door, with the cast iron, gooseneck, like the way it's matched very much the other building next door. Not necessary to be the same shape, the same model, but, similar. And the Holly is going to get a gate like
Yeah.
JV say, because the entrance of the building is going to be inside, so you have to get a toll. If you see in another building next door, you got in the Holly, you got the gate also with the lighting.
How does air conditioning handle the units?
Where the location we goes, in the roof. The same as other building. You got curbs on the top roof. Actually, the roof is pitched, but level up with curbs, and you got all the units individual for each apartment on that particular curbs.
So on the second floor plan, second to fourth floor, it says there's roof below. So you're treating the area between the windows as, is that
As a
going to
roof.
be in line with the rest of the building? Or,
There
the
will
first
be,
floor,
no,
yeah.
the first floor will be a roof, but it won't be a balcony, it's just a roof. So
Just
the
the
first
roof.
floor, if you look at the first floor plan, there's
The first,
the line is straight. I think it's a A1, so the first floor line will be a straight line, and then we'll have a roof
now I'm
above.
looking at the other side, I'm looking at the side that's facing
Yeah,
the,
yeah, the same.
so that's the same.
The first floor will be a straight line for construction purposes, and then where it says roof above will be like a balcony, or it's gonna be a roof, it's not gonna be a balcony.
Are you thinking of putting on like a balcony railing or anything like that?
We can look into that. We can-
I'm
Just
just
a
thinking
railing.
architecturally or for
Yeah.
use, because I mean, it's,
Well, it won't have access, but for architectural purpose, we can take a look to see how a railing will look.
yeah, you can get like a balcony into it with that width is no, that's at the decoration, that's fine.
right?
don't
I mean, I
mind.
think we can use
Yeah.
as much
I don't
decoration
mind.
on this space
Right.
as fun,
No, no, I
as
totally
possible,
agree
some
with you,
accentuation. I understand that this is gonna create relief.
Well, the roof, you have to be there no matter what,
Right,
to cover up the first floor.
yes,
But as a decoration with each floor all the way up, you can get the decoration rolling over to pretend that this is a
like a little balcony.
little balcony, yeah.
But you're not going to structurally,
No, we
Do
have
anything
no, I
that
don't
could
think it's wide enough.
eventually-
Exactly, so I mean, you can go in and get the foot out and that's it, you're not
you
even
get by
putting
your window,
much.
yes, right.
So in essence, this roof is tapered, is that
Yes.
how
I
you're
mean,
gonna
it's
deal with
have
that
to
condition
be-
of the offset? That like
Yes.
the roof on the right side would be narrower than the roof on the left side?
Yes.
Talking about the front elevation of the building.
Yes,
And then signage, you guys gonna have lit signage here, is it gonna,
Well, right now,
Speak to
we
the
call
signage.
for storefront sign that we haven't decided. I mean, it's gonna be good, you know, lit like the other one from the top, but it's gonna be probably, where's your wood sign?
Hmm?
The sign.
The sign?
Yeah.
Well,
Right now what we're
this
calling-
this is very much done the way you got next door with the Azek, as a recess with the molding around.
Right.
And who knows what it comes up in that business for move one on the type of sign. I mean, the sign is very much the way it look
Right
like.
now
So in
we're-
essence, you're saying you don't envision like a box sign or some kind of
No.
fluorescent
Well,
banner?
we're-
No.
What we envision right now is like I said, 18 inches by 15 feet. It's gonna be wood, and it's gonna be lit from the top.
No, it's, I don't wanna get boxes, lighting boxes,
No way, Bob.
like
Yeah.
old fashioned, no.
On the plan, A1, the windows on the second floor, the two exterior, left and right, I mean, in elevation, it looked like it's coming out, that it's protruding from the facade, but on plan, it's not. Okay, see here, we have a flat front, right? Second to fourth, and you're going to the elevation on A2. Yes, see how the two
Oh, those,
bays,
yeah,
the left and the right, look like they're coming out and sitting further out.
they're not, they're,
But
it's
how
just
can you,
treatment.
how can you explain then to me,
It's just,
how can you explain that the roof seems to go
It's-
further back?
right, I mean, it's a built out in the facade, but it's not actually in the floor plan.
It's built out on the facade and there's
It's
windows
nothing,
in it.
it's nothing structure, it's just
Right.
decoration. It's like a
We
bump
can-
out
we
like
can
6
provide-
inches.
But where's the window sitting in relationship to that?
The window from the inside sits in the same plane, and from the outside, we're building it out.
So
can-
you're
we
gonna
can
say
provide
that
you
the
with
build, that
details.
you're saying that the window recess is how much deeper? We don't see this on plan, we
Right.
need to see this.
Okay.
How
This-
much deeper is it? How much are you building this out?
We
6,
can-
12, 18, 20, what?
No,
No, it's gonna be like 6 inches.
6
Just- it's
inches.
just
6
to get
inches,
it-
so the windows are
just to
set
be able
back
to
6
build-
inches and they're aligned with the inside wall.
Yes,
Right, I think that should probably be reflected in either the right or
Yeah.
left elevation. As you look at it, you would see
Right,
some sort of it would protrude out, in some
Right.
fashion. So I think
right. we
what kind
will-
of saying is that's gonna
Yeah.
get reflected.
and on plan as well. I mean,
Okay.
you're stippling the roof area below, so you should be able to stipple, whatever happens on the floors
Sure.
above.
Okay.
Anyone else?
But, I'm in favor of any kind of accentuation, you just need to know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else on board, or? Anyone from the public? Okay. Being that this is also planning board, I think we'll adjourn it.
Actually, Michael, the planning board matter is actually, we have they're waiting for a ZBA determination.
Okay.
So if you want to proceed with the BAR as a vote with regard to that, you could certainly do that, if you wanted to at this point.
What I'd probably say is we'll wait to vote on the VR until the planning is approved. And if you're saying the zoning board issues, let them come back and then we'll handle
That's
it all at
fine.
the same time.
We
I
have-
think that's the.
At
least
we
we will-
procedural
And
way.
we will
then it
address
will
this
give
con-
you time
Yeah.
to do a little bit of elaboration on those
Okay.
projects.
Sure.
That's fine.
Great. Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Austin Children's Center is also planning board, so I'm gonna adjourn that as well to the planning board. We'll look at that then. BR 1618, 70 Prospect, any update there?
This was the complete thing we had. This is the zoning report.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this was before the zoning board 2 weeks ago. Variances were granted by the board with regard to the parking that involved 53 Bellevue, which is the property on the other side. So I think this was waiting here for the ZBA action, and the ZBA did grant those variances.
Good evening to the board. My name's Otis Curtis. It's 78 Prospect. Did you read 70, I think?
No.
78 Prospect.
78.
78.
Yeah.
This, we might not have anything.
We might not have this
These
in
typ-
our package.
Yeah, the packet is typically an update from something different from the month before, so. Floor is yours.
So, as Stuart mentioned, we were before the ARB a while back, required a couple of variances to address the contiguous property at 53 Bellevue, specific to parking. And so the proposed plan addressed that, and the variances were received at the last ZBA meeting for both properties to account for parking that would be lost at the 78 Prospect property, and to address those effectively by a deeded easement that would have backup house parking. So both properties would have parking in the rear, which I would advocate as an improvement as opposed to the current property at 78 Prospect that has a garage that is approximately 5 feet from the sidewalk.
This is September 18th. We're just going to try to pull up the BAR application, so we'll get that for you.
Yeah, there's no site plan, this is basically just a single family house, so typically.
Yeah, scroll down.
Look at the BAR, and that would be it.
That's 73 Prospect, 68 Prospect.
There
Going
were
down.
some issues, I
Keep
know
going
there's
down.
something else
Keep going down.
built in proximity, I think there's
Right.
some issues with the parking
See
and
where it
access,
says
so that's why.
2018 meetings?
So they're doing shared parking with the two houses?
Well, they're gonna, I guess, have an easement, so.
Didn't have the current.
Yeah,
September.
what there's going to be is, and if Mr. Curtis can comment on that, there's going to be an easement which will allow the Bellevue property people to access through Prospect, to go through Prospect to park in back of Bellevue. And there will be we talked about this, a recorded easement, so that it will basically run with the land, so that the folks will be able to go through from Prospect, through Prospect into Bellevue, where they would be parking their cars.
The elevations.
Yeah, so just to reiterate or revisit, the 78 Prospect property has a garage on it, and that garage is quite close to the sidewalk and has historically always been problematic in the sense that people will park and temporarily block the sidewalk, et cetera, as well as it's aesthetically atypical for most properties in that area. And so the idea is, with this single-family residence, we will take all parking to the rear of both houses. So that was the objective of the last variances. And the best way to accomplish that, of course, would be through some type of easement. The only other option, which I felt aesthetically was undesirable, was to attempt to do front-of-house parking at the 53 Bellevue. That did not look at all aesthetically appropriate, and if you look at the neighborhood, there are occasional homes there that have front-of-house parking, but it's quite rare. And so we, my architect and I, thought that the back-of-house parking would be the best for the net for the two properties.
And I think that's been kind of consistent with the village, that we've always wanted rear parking. We don't want to have parking in the front of that structure, so, I mean, that's sort of been a goal for a long time, and kind of a reoccurring theme that we have to deal with on occasion. So, I mean, let's look at the finishes. I mean, that's really one of the big things here. If you could speak to the finishes and.
Sure, so just to break up the architecture, I'm somewhat creative, but I personally have a bias about getting involved in things that I think aesthetically look nice and look right, look creative. I personally do not have any affection for a two-story vinyl sided home, and so we've broken up the exterior with the first floor being a vinyl clapboard type look and the second story being a shingle type look. We've also staggered the front of the home so that it aesthetically again is at least creating multi-dimensions as opposed to just being a square box. I think we've done a decent job, and you'll see this in some of the other pictures with respect to the windows. We're not cutting corners on windows, it's all about balance, that being there, the southern exposure more appropriate for windows. Also, that area to your right is approximately in line with the adjacent property, or the existing home at the adjacent property. And so it just makes sense when you look at the layout compared to the adjacent property that you wouldn't want a high density of windows in that middle area. And then on the northern exposure, we've tended to go light with windows simply because of the layout, as well as it being the northern exposure. It's not about money, it's just about balancing northern exposure and the layout of kitchen and other encumbrances.
What's the length of the balcony here?
I don't have the numbers, but I suspect, and I'm estimating based on a deck that I've done in the past, it's between 3 and 4 feet. It's not meant to be a barbecue space. It's meant to simply not feel entrained in your own property. And those are staggered decks, so one is meant to be first floor one side, the other is off the master bedroom. They're really sitting areas, not gathering areas for more than 2 people at most.
That's probably a 30-inch window right there, so you could,
And samples, do you have samples, or I see you cited colors and materials, but
I didn't bring any samples.
just kind of bring us through the colors then, yeah, probably be helpful.
So it'll be two different colors. Candidly, I'm not sure exactly what my architect put, but I think they reference to a lighter off-white type of mauve, clay, gray type color.
It says both the natural clay colored. It says the shingles, the corner boards, right.
Right, I didn't,
Boards of light.
Perfection shingles color natural clay, wood grain clapboard natural clay. So it looks like he specified the same color. Are these the sort of, I mean, is it going to be the uneven shingle look?
no,
that what-
no, that's
What is it?
monocolored.
But in terms of space, size, is it going to be the shingle that have different lengths? Or is it gonna be, I mean, right now.
The way it's pictured right now, the answer is yes.
Okay,
So it's a staggered look, but it's the same color all the way through. There is white trim that is highlighted there on the diagram.
Because that certainly has a different look than if, like Kaya said, you went with a similar straight line type shingle. I mean, this looks like more of a split shingle, if you will.
because, yeah, I mean, just.
So if
thinking
that's
in
the right
terms of-
term, that's the commitment, that I'm not a fan of the single line shingle look, otherwise it defeats the purpose of trying to break up the clapboard look with the shingle look.
There's fish scale look. I mean, I'm just looking at the design and look of the building. It has the feel, even though the roof line is fairly, probably 5 and 12. It's a very shallow roof. But still, the whole structure of the building has a sense of a 1900s farmhouse that we see many of in the area. And I think more appropriate, it would be to have, maybe fish scales or another, you can still get that in the composite material that you're thinking of using on top. And I would definitely say in if you are having a board, a corner, I mean, you're basically creating a capital on the very top, that should have a different material also. Because you're making this very top heavy by doing what you're doing architecturally. So even if you had, a different treatment in the gables and a different treatment again below that, and you can use the fish scales, you can use a number of different shapes that are not looking like a rustic cabin on top of, it looks like you took a rustic cabinet and put it on top of a farmhouse. And I don't think that's your intent. I understand what your intent is, and I agree, it's nice to break it up. But I would try to find other materials that are more in keeping with the house stylistically.
So point of clarification, if I may, I understand the gable side, you're suggesting could be a different pattern, which I have no issue with. I certainly think once you get to the next level of looking at colors and patterns, I certainly support that. It's not meant to look like a summer cottage that was plopped on top of a classic home, so I certainly would support that. The color scheme, I mean, it's meant to be somewhat neutral and well balanced, and so what's up there is natural clay. I believe the first level is white. If we could find something that works well with the trim, which is white, and
It says natural clay everywhere, and your trim boards are white, and that I have no problem with.
okay.
And that's why the texture sort of has to be in keeping with each other, and that's, I have no problem with the neutral look. That's not a problem.
But we might be able to tie in the architectural shingle colors with those gables. So I mean,
And even the siding on the second floor not being the uneven, but something that is more in keeping with a townhouse kind of feel.
and I would need clarification when you say fish scale. I'm a little unclear about that. The only thing I can say with confidence from my perspective, it's not meant to look extremely linear in terms of what's up there on the second level. Linear in the sense that it's absolute rows.
Yeah, all right, so the preferred material is like this uneven kind of
Yes.
broken finish, if you will, like a split shingle. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but.
I'm not in favor of it, but I have here, you can take a look. Here's a couple of fish scale.
Can I come up?
Yes, no, I can bring it to you.
Well, that's, I'd rather, it's more polite if I approach
It's okay.
you.
But you see, that's a fish scale. And you can get them with points, like with darts. Here's a different kind.
Okay.
And it just creates what you are trying to do, but not mixing cottage with
Okay.
townhouse.
So you're talking about what I thought you were talking about, and I've seen that before. I just don't personally love the rounded look. I think it's more natural to have staggered shingle. That's just my opinion. I've seen exactly what you're talking about. I thought that's what you were talking about. I just wasn't clear if you were talking, and you showed some staggered looks and some that are, let's call it more linear. I'm a personal fan of something that's a mixture. That's just my bias.
Well, I think it's gonna help whatever you do find, wherever you do make the final determination of materials, that we need to see that material, just, so there's, consistency to what, we're talking about here, because we don't wanna kind of send you one direction and you come back with something that's completely contrary to what kind of we're talking about here, so.
Just, could you address again, I'm sorry, why, I mean, without understanding what the interior floor plan is like, why there are so few windows on that one side elevation?
It's a combination of, I have great relationships with my neighbors. They happen to have a home that has a lot of windows on the property to the north. And I just, in context of that situation and the layout of the home, that the rooms will have the most light as laid out with the eastern and western exposure. And if you take, for example, a room, if you look at the original picture of the front of the home, there are some places where there are more windows on the east side. For example, the top level there, if you go scroll back up to the top there.
This one?
For example, the top right side of that picture that we're looking at, there's a double window. The alternative would be to throw another window in and then lose wall space, but you don't gain much light. So aesthetically, in terms of not only the value of the room, but also just how it appears, I in combination and in the context of my neighbor, I just am less inclined on the northern exposure to try to drop in more windows.
Thank you.
I have two questions. How do you vent the attic? Question number one.
Could you repeat the first part?
How do you vent the attic?
You're correct. There is no gable vent up there. The roof is not shown, but in the past, what I've done is put in a thermostat linked fan that essentially that's active ventilation. I've done that in the past, but soffit vents, usually, at least in my own experience, is enough for turnover. You just have to do the math correctly. You don't need gable vents. Usually it's a retrofit that somebody came in and said, well, we didn't put the soffit vents in, and to get the right turnover, let's jam these gable vents in. So normally you can achieve that proper turnover with just soffit vents.
Second question. I assume that you run the floor joists this way on that elevation? The floor joist is going from...
So parallel with the plane that we're looking at, that's correct.
How would you support the balcony?
The balconies will be structural. There will be nothing to the ground.
The joists run this way.
So typically what you do, in the same way that you frame out a staircase, you need to frame out a box that will support that break in the joists or the floor joists. And so the exact same thing is part of the plan, that it will be engineered accordingly, that when you take out a section of those in-plane floor joists, that it will be engineered into the infrastructure, not exterior.
Just want to make sure you don't end up with columns.
No columns, part of the plan, absolutely. And as if you scroll down, as part of having parking in the rear, the garages are in the rear, so it's absolutely the intention to make them freestanding.
Right. Anyone from the neighborhood come to talk to this application, or? I'll take that as a no. So, where are we?
I think we just need to see you again with material choices. And I personally would like to see an alternative to the uneven shingle. Or if it's a plastic or, composite material shingle, it may not look as great as if it was a natural material. I mean, they're just inherently different feels with same shape but different materials. So we sort of need to have that.
I would absolutely agree that what looks nice in a picture is different than the touch and feel of what you see. I can promise you, and I know you don't want to just operate on promises, but I've already gone well beyond the standard pricing of vinyl, the functional. I've definitely gone the look towards things that look very close to natural, minus the maintenance. And so any composite material, whether it's the staggered shingle or the clapboard look, its intention is to not look vinyl. But I am happy to bring materials as part of a follow-up.
All right, with that said, I guess we'll adjourn this till next month. You'll bring back these color samples, and we could probably move forward at that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
21 Edward Street.
Good evening.
John Caro. I work with Carl Grimm, the architect. And Mr. Shazad is here. Okay, so we're doing this house over on 21 Edward Street, which had burned. And I believe that what we're attempting to do is just to put the building back to a livable condition and try and come up with some kind of an appearance that sort of matches what's in the neighborhood. So we're really not adding anything to the building or taking away, except that we've changed the front of the building from what was a mansard roof to just a straight front with siding.
Do you know which drawing is the,
If we have elevations.
Oh, yeah, there's elevations.
Which one is it?
Should be A5 would be the front.
A5? Okay, thank you.
This attaches directly to another building on the south side. The house adjoining to the right is actually attached to the side of the building. And there's very narrow space between this and the house next door. I think there's probably only about 6 feet between the side of that bay bump out and the property line.
So, I'm sorry, did you say it's attached on this side or
Yes,
this side?
no, it's
That
attached
side you
on
would point
the,
to there, Michael.
on the right.
Here, Michael, here, look.
Bank Street.
That's the house, and that's the neighborhood.
So the exterior siding on the house is going to be exactly what's on there now. We're going to try and match as closely as possible what was on that portion of the building. So it'll be a brown roof and tan siding. The building right immediately or adjoining that is a yellowish color. So they seem to have enough difference between them that you can tell the difference between the two houses.
Questions from the board?
The word is dead.
Questions from the board?
Is it on?
Second one.
Yeah.
Anyone from the public care to speak to this, or?
Can you just say again, I probably didn't hear
So-
this well.
This,
Why are
that
they-
is the existing house.
That's right. And why are you
Okay.
changing the mansard roof? Because you're adding to it?
Well, the interior of that portion of the building burned very severely. So we're taking that part of the building off. We're keeping the lower level walls and rebuilding the upper level. And that was one of the reasons for eliminating the mansard. The houses along the street on that side are all fairly tall. And that yellow house on the right there is the adjoining residence. So we end right at the, we end right at that taller section with the small mansard at the top.
Michael, may I just ask a question? I know that, so, I'm very familiar with this building because the village nearly took the building over because it was vacant for such a long period of time. But my question is with regard to the adjoining building. Has there been communication with that owner with regard to what's planning to be done? I know that's not directly a plan, BAR issue, but since these are in fact attached buildings and it's a common wall there, I just want to make sure that, that owner, because I know in the past the owner has been somewhat loud.
Has
So-
Kumar spoken to them?
Not yet. Actually, once we gonna start work, then we're gonna speak. Whatever
Okay.
issue, whatever.
Can you please say your name for the record?
Kamar Shazad, I'm actually I'm Kamar Shazad, younger brother. He's out of state.
On the BARs, we don't send out notices, right, to the adjoining property owners, like the planning board?
No, we do.
We do?
We do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then hopefully they were noticed on this and,
I received 52 people.
right. That's why this got adjourned from last month.
okay.
So,
Any other questions from the board? motion to approve.
I have a question.
Can you please come up to the
Come on,
mic and
sir.
state your name?
Sure. Well, my name is Devon Pitt. My mother owns the property next door, 20 Edward Street.
The left,
Correct.
okay.
You're across the street or the
Next
joint?
door.
Left.
To the left, 6 feet or whatever.
That one.
This one.
A little more if you had your property.
Yeah, so, so you said the bay, is there a bay bump out, you said, is it?
Well, there's one on the side of the building now.
It's
We would just
existing,
be
okay,
keeping that,
okay.
yes.
All right,
See that little.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
We're actually not adding anything at all to the side of the building, except that the wall goes straight up now, instead of having the mansard roof.
Okay, all right.
And I think we've, on that side of the building, there are as few windows as we could possibly have, given the fact that we'll be facing you directly.
Right, okay. And I'm not sure if it's a question for this meeting or not, the fence, I think that fence dissects a, what used to be a common driveway.
Oh, really? I didn't put that there. I have no idea.
I know, that's why I bring it
I
up.
don't think Cuba did either, so.
Right, my dad, who's since passed away, had mentioned that, you know.
What if it is, you know, if it is a common driveway, it would facilitate actually being able to get vehicles back there, which would be much better than parking in front of the building.
Well, no, there's no access to get behind the building, I'm just saying, as far as parking, I think it dissects what was a common parking.
I got you.
So,
It looks kind of like a sidewalk.
well, I think that's an old driveway
No curb.
Yeah.
patch.
That may be a matter of just
Tires.
checking the deeds between the two
Right,
properties to
right.
see what there is.
Yeah, typically on the PAR stuff, we don't look at.
Correct.
Site plan
Site plan
issues and the aspects of it, so, okay,
No other questions?
thank you.
Thank you.
What was the roof you're going to put up again? I didn't really see that on the plan. Did you see a roof line? Is it a flat roof?
No, it pitches to the back,
It pitches to the back.
yeah.
Do you have a side elevation?
Yes, there is. The next sheet would be, I think, A6.
I think we really looked at the rest of it,
No.
adjourned.
The, yeah, that upper level portion, that's just storage. And then that other roof is flat, but it pitches to all three sides of that roof.
And colors you said are gonna match what?
It'll match what's there now.
Any other questions, gonna call for a motion?
Motion to approve.
Jesus, have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, application 419, 183 Main Street.
And that is me. So I will recuse myself from all other issues here. I can present. Yeah, is that correct?
That hurt me.
Okay. So you have this. And I will sit here in the back. Can you show the pictures? I will show the pictures. Okay, sorry.
So essentially, it's one storefront, you guys are gonna divide it into two? Is that what,
And let's do another two.
Okay, so another thumb drive? Okay.
There's another thumb drive that has better views.
There we go.
Michael, these are ones you have to see with.
Sue, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm Susan Reardon, the architect, and Kai again will be my assistant. So, okay,
We can hand this out.
this is her text, but I'm gonna read it. A bit of history. According to the property card, the building was erected in 1900. There are significant details to suggest that it was built earlier, somewhere in the post-Civil War era, most likely in the 1860s and 70s. The structure is red brick with lintel and sills of brown sandstone. There's evidence of cornerstone on the west-facing end wall, which face unfortunately has been destroyed by the aluminum facade erected in the latter part of 1900.
We have pictures on that if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's picture one.
Right.
On further examination, it appears the parapet is cast iron, not wood as previously assumed, and that's picture two. But it features an, what's this? Ancanus corbel or bracket, which suggests an earlier installation, a late Victorian detail we see in other buildings on the street from 183, such as 191 and 193 Main.
So it's an earlier rendition, it's an earlier version than the late Victorian we have more of in the village.
The photograph, picture 3, the building shows two separate awnings on either side of the center entrance of the apartments above.
And there is a close-up. If you close to the next, there we go.
Yeah. From the picture we obtained with help with the village historian, Dana White, the enhanced detail which you're looking at, it appears the west store was an Army Navy store with a roll-up canvas awning, and the east store was something else. The east store features what we believe is part of original extended storefront overhang detail, which was a fixed roof structure. There are two separate shingles mounted perpendicularly to the wall above, and the store features giant flat signs mounted above the store entrances, which clearly are distinctly different, even though we can't decipher the letters. In our case, for returning the current storefront to two storefronts.
Oh, go back, there's still a little bit on this.
This is the old modern modes. I don't know if any of you remember that. The photo suggests that the east store has a pilaster with a robe and swag motif. This is Kaya's speculation based on the parapet detail that was common in the day with fancy cast pilasters, but it can't be verified with other photographs. We have searched but found none, so it may be something else entirely, maybe a store display. However, store display catalogs from the day confirmed it was common to have engaged or protruding cast iron pilasters mounted on the brick facade at the end wall as an thank you, why smaller, more delicate sized pilasters or 3/4 columns will be part of the storefront glazing structure. We are fortunate to have many buildings in Ossining where the antennae are intact. Are intact, and a few still have original glazing support. Further, there are two separate shingles mounted perpendicular to the wall above the stores, and painted flag signs mounted above the store entrances on the brick facade, which clearly are distinctly different from one another. The Army Navy store has a dark background, the East store has a light background, even though we can't decipher the letters of the East store. We believe this image supports our case, not only by dividing the current storefront, but returning the current single storefront to its two original stores. On a structural level, we see evidence in the basement that the brick foundation has been built up at a later date in the front edge of the sidewalk vaults, pictures 5 and 7.
Yeah, you can show those if you want.
Yeah.
They're free.
So to the proposal at hand, the entire facade will be removed and replaced. We will not know until demolition what structure we have around the entrance to the apartment above. We have done some probing, so we have verified that there is plywood sheeting under the metal sheets. We believe there's to be more structure. If we should be so lucky to find original pilasters behind the layers, we will revise the design of the pilasters and other decorative elements, but the wall layout will remain. The two storefronts will be set back from the sidewalk to maintain the symmetry and give the west storefront 2 steps to accommodate for sloping grade from east to west. We will also incorporate the slanted side light. The doors will be 36 and the entrance will feel wider. The mulled window units will be Marvin Integrity by Ultrex.
All Ultrex, it's a kind, it's all Ultrex.
Oh, all Ultrex, sorry. Marvin Integrity All Ultrex, which is extruded fiberglass. We have chosen this option for maintenance reasons. We still need a historic board approval for material choices. As much as possible, we would utilize AZAC. The profiles will be built up and to emulate the look closer to the later historical details. I mentioned earlier, but not quite as ornate. We are not intending to replicate what might have been there. We are interested in creating a neoclassical.
We are not.
Oh, we are not interested in. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's get into the end. Okay. We are not interested in creating a neoclassical look as we see often being used on either new structures or renovated older structures. A historic look. Yeah, that's it.
Do you guys have a tenant in mind right now? Is there someone that's kind of slated to come in, or?
The owner's here. I don't think there's a tenant in mind at the moment, but maybe you can let me know. Is there?
No, no tenant yet.
Come up and present yourself.
My name is Beato Perez.
So his wife owns the dental shop that's in there on one side.
And that will
Oh, there's-
stay.
And that will stay.
So the dentist is staying, it's just gonna be one additional store? Same size as the dentist, like mirrors of each other?
Right, no, it's going to be kind of in front of it, smaller,
Okay.
smaller store.
Yeah, the dental office is in the back mainly, so.
There is a floor plan
Yeah.
that you can see as part of the documentation from what we filed.
I mean, essentially, the bulk of the restorations, this restoration work's really the first level. I mean, it sounds
Only
like you
the-
guys are gonna be cleaning up and doing some maintenance on the upper levels. but
Only the
essentially-
first level, we're not changing, we're not cleaning the brick, we're letting it effervesce by itself. We will take it up with the Historic Preservation Commission if there's any other work that needs to be done on the historic parts, but as of this moment, that's not intended. So the storefront, the front of the east-facing store will be the waiting room for the dental office. And come back, and then there will be a full storefront west that takes a little bit more room. It takes a whole area behind the staircases going to the second floor and third. And they will have a bathroom of their own, and they will be able to share the kitchen with the dental office that is there. Everything else in the dental office, in the actual chair operating area, is going to be unchanged.
So it would have to be a retail location, couldn't be a restaurant or a bar or anything?
It could be. We made sure that it was as big as possible. Restaurant may not be, well, then we'll have to have an ADA compliant bathroom, and we would have to have a ramp, so we probably can't do that.
Okay.
But we can do a larger retail store that doesn't have to be a phone charging place.
Yeah.
But something a little better.
Okay.
So this rectangular line here, is that supposed to represent something, like signage, or what is that?
That is
what's
actually a
up behind that?
recess. It's a recess in the brick that is above the, you can, if you look at some of the pictures that I think I sent with the application, there was an awning that was, yeah, maybe not, okay. But there was an awning that was attached to that was recessed. And it is a recess in the building structure itself. It probably helped signage at some point, but currently it is just painted brick that is recessed.
It might have held the old awnings too.
It doesn't look like it held awnings. I think everything else was below that. But it did hold flat signs.
Flat signs.
So you're not proposing, I thought on the plan I saw awnings, but maybe I'm mistaken.
We are not proposing an awning. The only thing you will see is that I'll have a small shed roof. Actually, it's gonna be more than a shed. It maybe have to go, maybe a return on the sides, but it won't be more than 10 10, 15, 18 inches, depending on how we lay it out. But it will only be to sort of shed the windows and give it a little character.
And then, will there be any signage? Or is it-
Yes, there will be signage, and we are expecting the signage can go up in that recess, and it can be etched on glass in the windows.
So from a procedural standpoint, are we gonna refer this to HPC and get their input, and then,
Well, HPC would have to issue a COA on its own, a certificate of appropriateness, and BAR would give can give its own. So you would have to give an approval anyway. It'll have to be a separate application to HPC because it's in the historic district.
so if we feel we're ready, we can move on this tonight,
Correct.
refer it to them, get your COA from them, and.
And
then we
we're
can send it to the
hoping,
residents.
of course, to present to them this coming Monday.
I'm sorry, Kai, I have one more question about the lower facade. The material that's in gray is that wood?
We're hoping not to use too much wood because of a maintenance issue, so we would try to use AZAC as much as possible. I have here in this little package that I sent around, the last sheet shows some of the profiles that we were going to use. I have them here with me. They are currently a wood profile, mostly intended for interiors, but since it's a small amount of material we need, we are hoping that we can have this made in AZAC or in a similar material that is paintable, so it can look like wood. So if I can show you some of the profiles, you can go around here and you can compare it to what you have in that extra document that I sent you. These profiles are from Interstate Lumber, Eyeline. There's some of the better stock manufacturers' profiles, both historic and this is a new line that has in my mind, a feel and a look of something that could even be late Victorian, Eastlake in its sensibility, but very minimal.
This is wood, it's just like wood, we're saying. This is like wood.
Michael, just confirm with Tracy and Jamie, this matter is actually before HPC Monday night, so it might be better for this board to see if HPC has any input, particularly with regard to the colors and what's being done. But it is on Monday's agenda already, so won't be much of a time issue there.
Does that mean that it could be okayed if HPC says okay, or do we have to wait another month?
Well, they could do an approval, they could do an approval, thank you so much, contingent upon HPC issuing the certificate of
Yeah, I mean,
appropriateness.
I think that's where I was going, because essentially, you know, this is a facsimile of
So that
what
would be
it's
fine.
always been, I mean,
Yeah.
other than these improvements that you guys are making on the first level.
So that would be fine to do it that way.
Okay. Anyone else from the board? Anyone from the public here to discuss, talk about this application? That being said, ask for a motion to approve it, subject to the findings from the HPC, I guess next week.
Monday, right.
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Application 519, 299 North Pond Avenue, Mariondale.
Good evening. My name is Michael Molinelli. I'm the architect for the Mariondale Center. Before you this evening to talk about a new, smaller building that we are proposing for the site. It is about 600 square foot. It's this small little dot amongst other buildings on the site. The building's going to be a self-contained restrooms to serve people at the pool and also in the picnic area. It's replacing existing rooms that are in the building nearby. Those rooms are not handicap accessible, they're quite old, they're in disrepair. And so this new location and new building will be a more modern, cleaner, accessible set of bathrooms. And then I can go into much more detail, but I'm sure there are a lot of things you want to know. I can just open up to questions.
And Mr. Chair, this is both the BAR and planning board now.
Oh, it is? Okay. So then what we do is maybe we'll hold it over. We could review architecture now and just hold it over and do one for both if we're ready at once for planning board.
Okay. So architecturally, do you want to just go over the elements on that?
Yeah, I mean, just run us through the colors.
Sure.
And some of your thoughts.
So the building is actually going to be self-contained. It has no heat, no air conditioning, no natural ventilation. It's not hooked up to any electrical grid. It's going to be mostly naturally lit because it's used primarily during the daytime, but there are solar panels that will power charged batteries, so we'll have artificial illumination during the evening dusk hours. It will be tapping a water supply, that's town water, and it will be attached to the existing leaching field, septic field that's across the stream. The building is going to be brick on the outside. I have samples here. This is a brick style. That is the style of the main building on the campus. It matches that. Likewise, the asphalt shingles will match the current asphalt shingles. So this is sort of a mini version of the Mariondale Center, which was built around 1964, which had a certain style and a certain approach to it.
And it's essentially just a seasonal use when the pool
Correct.
is open?
So I'll drain all the water out of it in the late fall and winter. When the picnic area or the pool are in use, we turn on the water and we'll have nice clean restrooms for everybody.
And colors, roof?
Again, I think I show some photos of the colors. It's sort of a gray asphalt, if I'm not mistaken.
Anyone have any questions on the board? Anyone from the public here to discuss this, or? All right, so what we'll do, I guess, is we'll hold this over till.
So I'll hang around for the plan board.
A question? Sure, please come on up, your name for the record.
Sure.
My name is Joe Mancuso from Eagle Bay Condominiums. I just wondered what the distance is from this building to the fence line of Eagle Bay Condominiums, approximately. I'm just not clear where it's situated.
Are you familiar with the gray building with the garage?
Well, wait, let's see.
So, here's Eagle Bay.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay, there's a couple of small buildings and a building here.
Okay.
There's a gray building here, and this is the main building.
Okay.
This is that building, so hundreds of feet.
It's well beyond the nearest building to your property line.
Gotcha, thank you.
That's what means anything.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? All right, so we'll just hold this over to,
thank you.
Do both then. Thanks. That said, let's go to planning board. We'll open up, come back to 49 Spring.
That was adjourned because we have it's before the zoning board.
Okay, so then we're done now. So then, okay, let's go for 80 Main then.
80 Main Street.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Hugo Suwatowski. I'm the architect and the co-owner of this building. We were here a month ago, trying to find a solution to a bad situation. As you know, the retaining wall from 60 Main Street had collapsed and dragged our rear yard. I brought a picture that shows the existing condition and where I drew a line. I know that the last time Mr. Chairman had mentioned and asked how we're going to treat aesthetically the slope. And I brought this picture to show how much of all this slope in reality is ours. And ours is only 20 feet of our building. The rest is the property down there. If you look on the southerly side, you see remainings of the wall that remain intact. Right there is where the wall turned and shows that's our property line. That is where the wall was. So from that red line going up to the top of, to there, right, to the top of the soil, that is where the wall was. To replace that part of our property that we lost, okay, and since it's very difficult to work and dangerous to work in here, I proposed a solution which is to build a deck that we can build from inside of our building in the basement with beams and overhang outside to create or recreate that area that we lost. You can see the shaded area there. That's the deck that we proposed. And that deck will not really alter the look of the building. Actually, the deck will be matching all the railings and materials of the balconies of the building. So this was the look of the building before, where you see the building with the wall and the yard, and this is the yard that we lost. So the deck will come overhanging that side of the slope. In terms of the slope, we are proposing to put vegetation, and we have a couple of solutions. One of them is to make the slope like steeper and apply this mesh, which is used for big slope to stabilize the soil and prevent more erosion. Okay, there are other solutions. Brian Broker here is the engineer. He was the structural engineer and he is the engineer, the site engineer. So he came and showed a similar solution, which Brian, if you'd like to explain to the board.
Yes.
Please.
Hi, Brian Brooker, Brooker Engineering, Suffolk, New York. You saw in the picture with the red line represents the property boundary. So the proposal, if you look at this map, this is recent topography after the collapse, which we took remotely because we couldn't really get on the site to do it. So if you look at the topography here, you can see that the landslide approximately ended in about a 2-on-1 slope, which is by all engineering standards considered a stable slope. So the proposal that I have is just to extend that 2-on-1 slope up until it intersects with the building foundation. The foundation of the building is all the way down on rock below this grade by probably another 10 feet. So it's still well below the where the grade would finish. But in this solution, we have this deck that would be over top of this slope. So the deck would be out flat, the slope would come from the exposed foundation, and what I would propose is something like ground creeping juniper blue carpet, something like that, that would take over the slope eventually and just continually and stabilize it. But in the meantime, it would be just wood mulch that would be put on the slope. Yes. In this area here, because we have the parking lot and we have this grade change, and there's actually a rock outcropping here, which we're not sure exactly how stable that rock is until we actually get some excavation going there. But assuming it's soft, and then it would attain the 2-on-1 grade. If it's hard, we would just leave it the grade that it is, which might be steeper. But in any case, a retaining wall would be required at this location. That would end, the walkway would come across, and then you would land on the ground to be able to get to the parking lot from the sidewalk. So this plan does not show the walkway, but the walkway that's proposed is right here. That's the deck he's talking about. It would then end at this retaining wall, and then you would walk from there into the parking lot. So there's about a 10-foot retaining wall for this stretch right about here to make up the grade at the end of the at the lost slope. The rest of it is just 2-on-1 slope. I think that's, you know, an engineering certain repair, assuming that this soil here doesn't get removed. It is an extension of the way that the landslide occurred and the way it ended up. So you know that that's a stable slope because the landslide would have continued flatter if that wasn't the stable slope.
Sorry for interrupting you, Brian, but also what this will do is that in the event that this wall wants to be rebuilt, it will have to be shorter than what it was before. So it will be like a less expensive wall to build if our neighbor one day decides to rebuild that wall.
Right.
The other change, I'm sorry, Brian, if you finish, that we had proposed to the site plan, and I think Mr. Khan had seen this with Mr. Joe Agostinelli, the building inspector. When we obtained the TCO for the building, one comment was that we move a parking spot from this side because there is rock here to this side of the property, which is a handicap spot, and they have striped it on top of the sidewalk. So we will remove that sidewalk. We will provide the lane for the handicap ramp in there, and right there, then they will catch the sidewalk that comes to the building and to the entrance of the building. I don't think that you guys seen this in the property, but Mr. Khan had seen it with the building inspector. That's a very minor change. It's like removing a piece of concrete and putting a curb and doing the lines on the pavement as opposed to on the sidewalk, obviously, which was a little absurd. So this is it.
So, speaking for myself, my concern is still the integrity of the rest of the site. You know, we're certainly happy to accommodate and give you the opportunity to make these, you know, changes to the site plan. I think the challenge now is that, you know, it's very engineering dependent, and I feel more comfortable if our engineer was sort of involved in this before we really gave you any kind of a final approval for the site plan modification. I mean, I guess the fact of the matter is the wall came down over the summer. There's been several months that this situation's existed. There's been continuous erosion, and we want to see that kind of get dealt with sooner rather than later. And I just speaking for myself, I feel more comfortable being that it's really a safety issue now, that the engineer be, you know, involved with this and review it and give us his findings before we really move further with giving you guys any kind of approval. I mean, we could leave it on the agenda, and, you know, hopefully by next month, if, you know, the engineers have gotten together, we can move on this. But again, that's my speaking. Happy to hear what, you know, anyone else on the board, you know, would like to share, you know,
I
feels.
think safety is paramount. I think we gotta take that extra step to ensure that we're doing the right thing.
I also have two other issues that I would like to address. Right now, the, if you see in the picture, the green turquoise orange pipe is the drain pipe coming off the roofs, which is now exposed. If
That's a
you look-
temporary pipe, yes.
Yeah, it's a temporary, but if you are sloping even further, where is that drain pipe going to go? And how is that gonna be below freezing so that it will drain even under freezing conditions? Those are some of the things I would like to see engineered. And see how, where, at what level are you then going into the, to the retaining basins, which are over by Maine? Those are the things that I think are important to understand and have as part of the complex
Yeah,
decision.
no, I'll explain. That's very simple. The drainage system is still here, the old drainage system. This is just a temporary pipe that we put to catch the water from the roof to avoid more erosion. Actually, our idea was to be able to start working with this, like now in the winter where the soil is like sort of frozen, which is more stable as opposed to wait another month. But if you want to run it by your engineer, okay, that's fine. 2 and 1, 1 and 2 is a very normal slope. Okay, you can walk up that slope. Okay, but to answer your question, this pipe will be reconnected to the existing drainage system that is
Right,
there.
but where? Where in elevation? Because you're talking about regrading to a 2 and
Is
whatever.
right, well,
So
the rig
it-
right here will be here,
We'll just put it inside.
okay? But what we will do with these pipes here is that instead of having now, as we had it outside, we will put them inside the basement. So all these pipes are gonna disappear, they're gonna come, the leaders are gonna come down, they're gonna go down inside the basement through the wall and then reconnect.
And what about the drains that are the ground drains? Are they, will,
The
how?
same,
how-
that's the same.
So they will, okay, so they will be, are you having any exterior drains that?
Yeah, we
may
have.
any-
We have
And
to-
where's that gonna be placed in
All-
terms of,
No. There
There's
is
no
there is
exterior
not.
drains for the.
There's no
for the
exterior
foundation.
drains.
So we're talking about gutters, leaders, the roof drain
right, so
system.
you're
That
running-
stays the same.
You will be running that inside the building.
We will come with the leader, right. The catch basins of the property, they're gonna stay and they're gonna remain where they are. There's no changes. There's one here, there's another one here, there's another one here. Those are basically catching the water from the side. The water from the roof, okay, will go into the drains, and except that going inside the ground and going to this catch basin and this pipe that we built, the new pipe on the street, okay, we go inside the basement. So instead of having this pipe going outside the wall, now it's gonna come inside the wall, so you're not gonna see it.
Okay, and this is gonna be an unheated basement? How are you preventing any freezing? I mean, again, those are the things we need to have real answers to.
The basement will be heated at temperatures,
It's
obviously not 68
Right,
degrees,
right,
but
right, right.
above 30 degrees, right, yes.
So are you guys saying, is there a footing drain, is there a footing drain
Yeah.
along the,
I'm sorry?
is there a footing drain along this
There
elevation
is,
here?
there is one there that was there, but don't forget that basements, because they are like this basement like this, it's a cellar really. It's underground and everything is underground. Temperature in that basement never went below 50 degrees. If you go to the basement in your house and you see your pipes never freeze in the basement in your house.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to leave this on the,
Yeah, I
on the
mean,
agenda. I think it's, being that it's a safety thing, you know, the village engineer wants to opine on this. I think we're happy to come, you know, facilitate a solution and work with you guys as fast as, you know, you're willing to work with the engineer, so. I think that's
and I
fine.
actually prefer also, since we don't want to have anything more to happen with this, I would prefer that you go fairly far in your structural engineering for the cantilevering of the deck. So we understand exactly where it's gonna be placed in the foundation wall, what kind of effect and it can have on the rest of the building, since it's something, things that I would really feel.
It's all done, you have the plans, we submitted to you the last meeting, okay, we calculated all that. It's just a simple overhang attached to the foundation wall of the building, which obviously can support, okay, 6-story more of building because it's a 12-inch foundation wall, and welded to the columns inside the building. Really is a very simple solution. We do that every day.
Structurally, I would like to see more detail on that.
Okay.
There's a plan that's.
There is a plan that you
complete,
have, I
detailed,
mean,
well, everything.
it's very detailed. It's a very detailed plan that we submitted last time.
Oh,
I would be
yeah.
glad, I would be
Okay,
happy
I
to
will
resubmit.
have to look at it again, but I
And
guess.
certainly the village engineer can
Yeah.
add
Yeah,
comment.
the
Yeah,
building inspector
that's what
saw
we
it,
should-
and the village
yeah.
engineer can take a look at it, absolutely, and if you don't have it, I can be happy to resubmit.
I have one question about the proposed vegetation. Are
Yeah.
you only doing that to your property line, or you're,
No, I'm doing that up to my property line.
And that's
I'm
it.
not
So
doing it
below-
on the other
right.
property, obviously.
so we don't know how the remainder of the site will be staged?
That you have to ask my neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it was a flat, I mean, this was all flat until the wall gave out. and
Right.
Right.
This is what we're kind of left with now, so
That's fine.
just want to move this along.
Difficult thing.
Okay. Anyone from the public to speak to this, or?
Pedro Silva, 125 Main Street, head office. Quick question. I own properties in Secor Road, front to this, and the west side. How long you going to get these things done if you dress it up only? Just a platform for the tenants live in the building to look better, with other people down below or walk on the street or drive on the street, or you got properties next door, how do we going to be this fixed or done? Or get the village involved, how do we going to be for us to get some a different view, a different type of look than the way it is? And some answers, I apologize to say that,
Please.
but the point A to point B is a slope in the middle. Other way, you're going to dress it up all the water in there, and you're going to be more dirt coming down,
No.
and more coming down. And the roof water, yes, you can dress it up, go inside the building.
building.
That's, I did that in the past, and I got one building
that's
to like
very
that.
common.
That's okay. But what about the water? Go in the lower point, and a half a moon, you get it in the elevation, other way you're going to dress it up that water. So you're coming down and you go to the road,
Well, that.
With the dirt?
That's where we put the pipe there, like we put a new pipe there, and there are other pipes here, and there is a catch basin here.
yeah, but the water not go up, otherwise
The
you
water-
have, you know, for daily light water, you're not able to get a sump
So
pump
speak to the
into it.
board, and then.
No,
the
I know,
gentleman
I
will
just
address-
apologize when I say to
No,
them.
no, that's okay. It's
I
a
just
very
answer.
fair question. It's a
It's
very fair
just
question.
answers, that's all.
It's the same way that the word.
I'm worried because
Yeah.
I try to develop some properties in Secor,
course.
I don't wanna get this look
No.
at the way it is right now.
Well,
I mean,
that's-
it's going to be for a year,
And
3
that's
years,
what-
5
and that's-
years?
And that's why the applicant's back here, we want to work with him to try to move this along to get some remediation done so that we don't have to look at this. for the
Well,
next,
that's what I'm
you know,
concerned, after the remediation
10
done, you
years.
walk away and they don't care about
Yeah.
there. That's what my concern. So you have to be some action into it right now, if you do the right
That's what
way,
we're
to not
doing.
get all this over us.
That's
You know,
what-
this
that-
is
That's what we're trying to do. If I
Right.
get approval today, I will start tomorrow.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
But one of the points I want to tell is, if this is not get it done right, this is architectural,
Mhm.
or a plan reviews for that, to get all the buildings done and all the proposals done right, and this you look to look like this, that's a kind of weird
I
for us.
agree with you.
Well, it's definitely a unique challenge. I mean, all the years I've been here, we've
Thank
never
you.
had anything like this, where
Thank you.
something's come down and we have to kind of amend the site plan,
Yep.
so.
Hello, my name is Katina Sek. It's a beautiful building, you know. I'm sure they'll do a great job, and we are waiting for this. My mom actually is going to be a future resident. She's
Oh.
waiting for this building. Everybody's waiting, so hopefully we are hoping that it's going to be approved. You know.
Well, the only thing that we say
Thank you.
is to have the engineer to work with them.
Right.
I said, well, I don't understand what is the
Yeah.
back and forth over here. No, engineer work with them, and that's it.
Right, we're gonna leave this on, we're gonna leave this open on the agenda. You know, the engineers, the two engineers will get together and talk about it, and, you know, we're happy to move this along as fast as we can.
Thank you.
And the building is pinned to the ground, and, you know, from everything from what we've been told and seen is that, you know, the building's safe, it's not gonna slide down the hill. It's just that we wanna make sure that we've got everything done the right way.
Well, just in case if anybody had any type of doubt to that respect, okay? Because when we build the building, obviously we hire a control inspection firm that works there every day. And we have all the pictures here showing exactly how the foundations were done. The building was all down, pinned to rock. This is a wall that collapsed, okay? But all our building went all down to rock. And it's very, very clear. We have all the pictures, okay, from when this was built.
Good evening, my name is Robert Corti. I represent the owners at 60 Main Street. Mr. and Mrs. Holman, they're here this evening as well. Earlier this month, I sent a letter into the planning board with some pictures expressing some of my concerns related to the project. One of them was, I believe you raised yourself, Mr. Beldotti, at the last meeting. You asked a question as to whether or not this was a permanent or a temporary solution. I don't know if you recall that question. I don't think it's being presented as a temporary solution now. It's a permanent solution. Obviously, it's a very expensive undertaking to be drilling through the building and to be putting steel and anchoring it in and having a cantilevered, I'm assuming, concrete pad hanging out there. So I don't believe at any time that it's a temporary solution. And I think that should be clear that it's not the intent of the owners to do so. One of the problems, in addition to that, is once that cantilever is out there, it really does preclude further work on drainage and work on that slope. The slope now is stabilized, but stabilized if you look at the pictures, because the remaining of the wall is still down there at the bottom and holding that up. When that finally gets removed, I don't know how stable that wall will be or how stable that dirt will be. You have all of the concrete and steel from that wall still in place. It has not been touched. I've been in contact with Mr. Kahan throughout this period, advising him that we have engineers looking at the project with possible solutions, remediation on it, and as well as carriers. I understand the village has retained engineers to look at it as well. My concern is safety. I expressed that the first time someone falls off that deck, it's a horrific situation. I raised the issue of safety again because, as I showed in my pictures that I submitted, the fencing that was up there was not fencing that would preclude anyone from getting injured. It was just partially there, and you could still walk, at least you could last week, right off that property onto the hill. There's nothing to protect you. It is eroding. As we sit here tonight, it's eroding. There was no remaining drainage up there at the collapse. What was there was corrugated pipe, and that was replaced by the plastic pipe by the contractor retained by the owners at 60 and 80 on agreement with the village. So there is nothing up there. Our real concern is continued erosion and that coming down. We haven't seen what would stop that. It didn't stop before. We had very serious concerns about what was done with the drainage previously that led to this situation. This isn't being litigated here at the planning board, but we do have serious considerations about what's going to go on. And I don't believe that putting the deck up there in any way, shape, or form is going to assist in the ultimate solution of that problem, because you're going to have that issue there. The drawing that was posted a little earlier showed that the property line to the wall was 25 feet, not 20 feet. That was posted by, I saw it over here as one of the plans. Options are, I can't tell the owners of 80 what to do. They can make that level back there. They have 25 feet of space and they can build a wall just about anywhere. They don't need a cantilever deck. If they want to fix it, there's other ways that are safe for the public and don't cause an imposition on my client down below and don't cause an eyesore.
So let me just kind of halt you for a second. There's an opportunity here. The village engineer's going to be involved. The applicant's going to be involved. You're certainly welcome to be part of that process. I think we'd have a much better outcome if everybody worked together.
Absolutely.
So I'll leave it at that. I know your comments are in writing, which is fine. Let's hope that between now and next month, we'll have a solution.
I don't know if we'll have a solution, but we will have a conversation.
Yeah.
I did express to Mr. Kahan that our expert engineering reports will be available soon, and we would like to call a meeting and express to council for the owners at 60. As soon as I have that, we'd like to have a meeting to see what can be done at this time to not have an eyesore, not have a dangerous condition, and that both parties can go forward without giving up any rights to any resolution of this in the courts if that's necessary. But we'd like to get rid of this because it's a dangerous condition in Ossining today. And we'd like to see that resolved. I don't want to see something happen prematurely that could possibly cause damage or harm to anybody.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Joe Haspel, I'm counsel to 280 Main. Lawyers.
By the way, guys, I mean, we don't want to have a trial here.
No,
That's not what this is about.
That's exactly my point.
So
lawyers are lawyers,
let's keep
engineers
this,
are
let's keep
engineers.
this short and sweet.
Lawyers are lawyers, engineers are engineers. The board's recommendation that the engineers get together for health and safety reasons is the correct. Lawyers getting up here to litigate issues is not correct. We support doing things correctly. For the last 2.5 months or 3 months, I've been writing to Mr. Cork, suggesting that we get together to discuss a global solution. To date, we haven't been taken up on that suggestion. We've been told that we're waiting for our engineer's report. I can't imagine why it's taking so long. We agree with the board. The best solution is a solution that everybody agrees is safe and will move the project forward so the lady's mother could get in as soon as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So with that being said, we'll adjourn this till next month, and we hope to have a solution by then. Thanks, guys. 49 Spring Street.
Okay. 49 Spring.
Oh, sorry. That's adjourned, okay. Maple Lodge, 173 North Island.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
We've talked together many times, so it's like this. I don't remember the last case I had with you, but
Two of us in a bank.
yes. Take it easy.
Typical linear thing, when we approved that bill at CO, this is like, John, had information, let's just get this one right. JB?
Good evening. We were in front of your board last month with this project, and I think the one remaining item we had, besides some comments from engineering that were addressed, it was that we were going to be in front of the environmental board. We went in front of the environmental board, and there were some suggestions made, and I can go over how we have addressed those suggestions. There were very simple suggestions we have used. There's a comment about the landscaping that we have used. Make sure that we use items from the Westchester County native plantation. And so we have done to the planting list, and we have then addressed those. Also, there were comments about make sure there was a landscaping buffer. We have a landscaping buffer against the gas station and the two houses. We already called for landscaping there. We also have landscaping along the other property line. And here there is an easement where there's no room to put landscaping. Also, there was a comment or a question about if we had the intention of using solar panels, which my client said yes. So we made a note on the drawing that eventually there will be solar panels on the roof. And there was, I don't think there were architectural questions from last time. We used, again, we are expecting to move forward, and then we will have to deal with DOT, and I believe on March 4th, we are going back in front of the environmental board.
Right, because Mr. Chair, as JB points out, the environmental board had a full hearing on this with the applicant. They made recommendations which were submitted by email to the applicant with regard to what needed to be done. I'm pleased to see a lot of that has been done. It can be reported back to the EAC at their meeting, which is this coming Tuesday, and they can then issue a report to the board, you know, their consistency review, so.
So I know Brian, our engineer, is in here tonight from
Keller.
our Keller, you know, consulting engineer. Is there any open issues with him at this point? Is there anything that Tracy?
Not that we know of.
I don't believe there are.
They submitted the SWIP. So we have that.
There were engineering comments from the past that those were addressed in our last submission, we had the SWIP. And I believe also the environmental board has a copy of that as well.
Yes, they do.
Yes. So at this point, I mean, we have gone through, this is, we have reviewed this project for several months now. We have, I believe we can move forward, and I think we have pending will be the DOT approval and the environmental board approval, or any other, I don't think there's any other major issues.
I think last month we went over architecture. What was the final?
Architecture, we have gone, we have reviewed architectural, like several months ago, and there was no general comments. We went through the colors, which we have taken back the colors from the past. We have substituted the colors because the original colors were not around anymore, so we had to substitute that.
And so the names of the houses.
And again, the previous approval had expired for the site plan and the BA and the architectural approval.
Right, it had expired, the reason it had expired, it was due more to engineering reasons than the time elapsed, and it wouldn't, I guess we had one extension, so we couldn't get a second extension.
So before we, kind of from a procedural standpoint, we'd have to vote again tonight, I guess, on VAR and on site plan.
Right. Well, JB, let me ask you, it does, I'm just reading what Brian has here in his last. The applicant shall submit an updated environmental assessment form based on the project revisions. I don't have that full here. Was that done?
Yeah.
It was done, okay.
And
So
I think
that-
that's, if you see that SWIP, the package, I think it's
Was in there?
revised.
Okay.
It has a revised date.
Okay, oh, that's fine. So what we would need then, Mr. Chair, is that you're gonna have to, there was a prior determination of significance, there'd have to be a determination of significance now based upon what, you know, what the particular proposal is.
I think if memory serves me correct, it was a negative declaration,
Correct.
type 2, so
Right.
essentially we didn't think there was anything. and
No
in
environmental
essence-
significance at that point.
Right, being that this is the third time around, assuming again that there's nothing significant, you guys have addressed all our engineering concerns, and, you know, DAC's opined on whatever they need to opine on, I think we can move forward. So, is that pretty much it, JB?
Yep.
Okay. Questions from the board?
No.
Okay. Question from the public?
Thank you.
And just your name for the records.
Yes, of course. Christopher Feldman from the law firm of Harris Beach PLLC, 445 Hamilton Avenue, Suite 1206, White Plains, New York, 10601. I'm here, I've actually been here a number of times on this project. Unfortunately, I couldn't be at the last meeting where this project seemed to have moved together a lot quicker than it had been for a long time. I first appeared on this project representing the neighboring property to the south, 171 South Highland Avenue. We represent Global Partners who have an interest in that property. I first appeared on this project, I believe way back in October of 2017. I submitted a follow-up letter dated November 8th, 2017, raising a wide variety of issues relating to this project. And that was again November 8th, 2017. And in that writing, I raised a number of issues. First of all, as was actually raised at the last meeting, I couldn't be here, I had another meeting for a town I represent, but the issue of a subdivision was brought up. As I've raised in my previous submissions, there are 4 lots here, but they're putting multiple uses, and I believe my understanding is they're joining all 4 lots. But there's been no subdivision application. And it seems to me that there should be a subdivision application which would apply to Chapter 233 of the Village Zoning Code. But that has not been done, because you have lots 7, 8, 10, and 11. And there are actual uses straddling one property and the other. The applicant has not answered that question or submitted such application at this time. I also don't know how the bulk requirements, how does, a project that's straddling two lines of properties meet the side requirement of this property or that property? I don't know how that applies. Also, there's issues of ownership on this property. This board's rules require that if somebody's submitting something with a contract vendee or something like that, that they get signatories of the other, property owners. I've foiled for the documents, and those have not been provided by the applicant to this point. And I think the biggest issue that I have with this project, in looking at it, that has not been answered since October of 2017 by the applicant, is you're putting 4 principal uses on one property. How do you have 4 principal uses? You have a retail or snack shop, you have a gas station, you seem to have a restaurant, and you have a self-storage facility. If under the zoning code, those are all designated primary uses, which ones are secondary and which ones aren't, and how do you have 4 primaries on all one property? Additionally, I looked and I said, oh, maybe they're accessory uses. I looked at the code for accessory uses. A restaurant, a retail facility, and a gas station are not accessory uses. So the applicant has not answered any of these questions, to my knowledge, dating back to 2017 when I raised these issues. I will be submitting additional issues in a letter that I'm going to prepare following up on my previous letter, which the board should have. I understand there are many new members since October of 2017, but this project did languish for a long time. I came to meetings for, at one point, I think 6 months, where nothing happened. It was just put over. And then I wasn't able to attend last meeting, and all of a sudden we have a lot more stuff going on. So my client would request that this be put over for these pretty seemingly basic questions to be answered, especially the one that was raised by staff at your last meeting with regards to the subdivision application. So that's our request at this time, because these issues have not been addressed for almost 2 years now. And I'll be submitting something to the board.
Thank you. So, look, I'll give the applicant the opportunity to speak to some of that. Again, for clarification, this approval for this project's based on its 3rd approval now.
That's correct, but, I mean, you still can follow the code.
So, again, the project has been on its 3rd approval, I think several years, this goes back several years. I'll give the applicant the opportunity to speak to some of those concerns, and then we'll open it up to for further discussion.
Well, it's now 4 principal uses that we had discussed that with the board. There's going to be 2 separate lots, and that was part of being the site plan approval. There's going to be an easement, so we have a gas station, a snack shop, and we have self-storage. There's no restaurants, there's no gym anymore. So 2 separate lots, and there's going to be 2 separate uses.
So basically this gas station,
Yeah, and I
snack
think
shop.
we went to, it's the same as next door, there's a gas station with a snack shop. All the gas stations have a snack shop, yeah.
And the storage facility, that's the
The
use
storage
you're
facility,
speaking
that's the
to.
only other use.
Got it.
As per, there were 4 different names of ownership, but they're all owned by Mr. Salsa Lee. I think you know 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember even the previous chairman, Mr. Clark, he shut him down. He said, all gas station has a mechanic and has a snack shop and has a gas. It has 3 uses and more. Some even shopping center has a shopping center and has different retail in that location. So to come and say this lot just has more than 1 use. The property he's presenting has a snack shop, and they say gas station, and they say even outdoor stuff there in different occasion. So we're not doing anything that is not uncommon in the village of Austin. And I think
So question there is, again, you own all these lots. Do we have submission, have you guys submitted that you have title to those lots? And I'm sure we
did.
talked about it, but
I
again,
owned this property since 2006. I owned, that's the property I owned. Maple Lodge, G-Jor, and in 2008, I bought 173 LLC, which is the gas station. The one that's
So in the application, do we have that verification that, you know, all 4 lots are owned by Mr. Salih or an entity that he controls?
I would,
I'm sorry, and I could, just
I
to,
need to double check that
Okay.
to see if that was actually there.
yeah. And just to, if you go back to, I believe with the second approval, where there was an issue about an easement with the neighbor on the other side, all the ownerships, all the easements, they all were, both sides.
We met together and we had to make the agreement, and the lawyer, my lawyer, and the lawyer next door, we met and we make that agreement, so.
So what the applicant's talking about is the motorcycle shop next door, there was an issue about access, and there was some issue with, you know, where the lot line was. And again, no one was here for that
You were the only one.
application,
Yes,
so,
yes.
it's just so the rest of the board knows, that was resolved, and they kind of ironed out all those issues between the motorcycle shop and Mr. Salih's property, so that's what they're speaking to, so, you know, we did go through that, so.
And I do own all the LLC, the one owns this property on, which is about 4+ acres of land and buildings existing on their lots now. So all of them is mine actually.
Just because I'm probably ignorant about some of these things, are all these properties going to be joined into one, or are
It's
they going to be?
two? It's going to be two. One is for the self-storage and one for the gas station.
And there's going to be separate, so you went through zoning to get that
Well,
changed?
no, we're going to do a line adjustment first.
Okay, so
line adjustment onto it and.
So let's say if these are individual properties, I'm just
All
trying to.
contiguous lots.
Or, yeah, that means that within those properties, these buildings
Yes, we do have, okay.
comply with setbacks and whatever else.
Yes, I think you go into.
That- I mean, I just don't recall
There
whether
is,
we
I
did.
believe, and,
So let's, again, close the loop, if we
Yeah,
don't have
let's-
these
let's
documents
just,
to bear that out, make sure that.
This has been approved before. This is the third time through approval.
If
We went
you-
through once and the second time. We went through
You know,
all this.
I'm just
Yeah,
to
no,
educate
to
myself.
answer your question, if you, I believe it's I think my glasses. S1?
S2.
S2, okay.
NC,
We have,
this is, G, this is
yes,
G.
we have
The G
already
result?
shown how the 2 lots comply, how there are going to be 2 lots and how they comply with all the zoning requirements.
Okay.
It's lot 1 and lot 2. Lot 1 will be 0.96 acres and lot 2 will 3.5 acres. And all the bulk and regulations compliance there.
And we did go through this the first time and even the second time, and this is the thing.
I don't want to,
Well, I'm gonna let them finish, you made your points, let's let the
and I
applicant
just wanted to
finish.
just ask for a quick clarification. I don't want to try to get into a back and forth, I promise. It's a snack shop with a drive-through, or is it a Dunkin' Donuts? The gas station, I'm looking for clarification on
It's
that.
like if this gas shop, they have coffee station inside, so that coffee station is can be Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And they
It's
have
not
drive-thru.
qualified as a restaurant, is that?
It's not a
No,
restaurant.
but it's, so there's a.
There's no tables there, there's
So
not.
there's a Dunkin' Donuts, and there's also other convenience
There's
store
a-
items available?
It's a snack shop inside.
Okay, so it's both.
It's not, it's a snack shop, Dunkin' Donuts is part of that snack shop, but they have a drive-through privilege, that's what it is. So it's a one door, you enter into the store, you could go for coffee or you could go for snack. And there's no table there to sit and eat inside.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Or what other issues did, you wanna?
That's it, and as far as
address?
environmental, we met with the board, we did, all the questions they come up with, we answer it, we give them all the answer, whatever they want, we just answer it, and we did the changes they required, we did it and everything, okay.
Any other questions? Good.
Is that a gas station?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the pumps here and this.
This is the shop.
This one.
There is a gas station highlight.
Mhm.
Is there a plan, site plan showing where the fuel tanks
Barry? It's right here.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, it used to be their gas station, we put on basically the same spot.
So we're gonna, I guess, basically make secret determination with regard to this, and we can move on to the site plan if we feel we're ready to do it. Okay. So, again, basically, this is an approval, so we need to make secret determination.
Determination of significance, and then you can go from there, that's
Okay.
correct. And I know with a number of the issues that Mr. Feldman raised, I know a number of these folks weren't on the board, but Chairman Baldati and Jesus, you may remember, some of these were raised, I know by Chairman Clark, former Chairman Clark, some of those issues with regard to the, with regard to the number of lots that were there, and all those issues had come up before. But it would be a matter of, we would just have to get the determination of significance here before you had issued a negative declaration in the past. And then it would be approval, for site plan for declaration to be prepared.
And architecture, where are we with the BAR approval? Is that, I know we kind of looked at that last month, are we?
I don't know if anything was specifically presented. My recollection is, and JD, correct me, did we actually go over all that?
We have, I mean, since we've been here like 7-8 months,
And I think
we have gone through it a few times, and there were a couple questions. The last thing we went over last time was the colors, because we have found out that we could.
Yeah, we had spent a lot more time on BAR
architecture, yeah.
review than site plan, because
Right.
engineering was still
Right.
in the works, and, that whole, I think,
It's
dealt
some,
with the village
just
and the
to,
applicant.
one of the things that prior member John Fry was, it was the tower's design, and make sure that we complete it, so you know, kind of, we used to have to choose half the pyramid on the top, so we end up completing the whole roof, so.
That's what the request under one of the boards, actually, so we did. And that was done really, Mr. Chairman, just before, it has to do engineering, always have to do with engineering, that's what delayed all things.
All right, so I'd like to call for a motion to make the secret determination of a negative declaration, I guess, in terms of environmental significance.
Second?
Oh, I need a motion. so-
Need a motion
Oh,
first.
sorry.
All right,
I will motion.
Jesus, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. So then I guess the next part of that would be move on the site plan?
Yes.
Okay. So now I need a motion to approve the site plan as submitted and reviewed. If I have a motion,
Motion to approve site plan?
okay. A second? David, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that'll be subject to the standard conditions that we put into our usual site plan resolutions.
Right.
Plus with the understanding that obviously you have to get the DOT approval.
Yes.
I do, and as I said, they will be before the EAC this coming Tuesday to basically present what they have already put with regard to this.
Okay.
So that will also be reflected with regard to the resolution.
So with regard to that, do we want to
I
go
would,
with the?
I would actually like to get
BAR,
another, yeah, I think it would be nice to see what the mechanicals are gonna look like and where they're gonna be placed. You're gonna have a roof that's mainly
Well-
flat, that you can look down on it from the street. So,
We're not have mechanical on the roof.
So you want to do site plan, you want to put
Well,
BAR off?
Right, maybe what we do
I think
is,
it could be on BR.
No, there's no mechanical in the roof, it's not gonna be mechanical on the roof over here. This is the self-storage, we have no equipment to put in the roof on it.
You're not gonna, it's not gonna be, air conditioned or any of that?
It's a low timber, which is the people put behind or behind the building, or it could be anywhere. It's a self-storage, it's not.
You're not gonna have huge
No, we're
venting
not gonna
equipment
have
on the
all
top?
this, no, nothing,
Okay.
nothing. So that's why.
essentially the structure, the
Yes.
bulk of the structure is going to stay the same, other than some
Right.
color changes, some aesthetic
Right.
Yeah.
details, I guess, on the
Actually,
facade.
the changes from what the approved one is the same color, but we changed the name because the name is no longer exists, so he changed, even though he changed the color, but he changed the name of the color, not the color itself.
So I guess that's the question, I guess, what's the board's feeling on moving on on the BR approval tonight, or do we hold over till next month for?
I don't see any reason why we should hold it over. I mean, it's, you know, it's
Everybody, you guys are satisfied with
commercial
what you have?
structure and.
Okay. All right, so then I'll call for a motion to approve the BAR.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Sue's got a second?
Second?
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, next. Camp Woods, 19 Camp Woods. Don't go too far, JB.
Yeah, smaller board.
Michael, I'd like to request that we take a break for staff, since it's 9
Sure.
o'clock. Take a
Okay.
5-minute break. Fine.
5-minute recess.
Just come over there.
Nineteen Camp Woods?
Yes, well, we had a couple items that the board wanted us to address the last time we were in front of you, and hopefully we did address all of them. We had discussed the last time, we were talking about the parking situation. So what we have done is, we have, the way we designed the parking, and we designed the number of units and retail we have, we are required to have 20 parking spaces, and we are providing 20 parking spaces. And how,
Am I on the right?
that's good?
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
This is Camp Woods.
Yes, so we have gone back to having the parking like it is now, perpendicular to the building. And what we have done is eliminated the sidewalk that used to connect the front to the back. And I believe if you move forward, you're gonna see on the floor plan to, or you can leave it there for a second, I can go over again the issues. We have the loading area, we have the snow removal, and we have the garbage collection. All of those in the blue and the red indicates how we have addressed those issues. The loading area is gonna be of ours. We show how the truck does actually back up into the garbage area, and we have the parking spaces. 20 parking spaces, 20 are required, and we no longer have reserved parking spaces. So, and there is no need for variance, there is no need for the board to talk about reduction in parking. And
So JB, when you say no reserved parking spaces, does that mean that there's no reserved parking spaces for the daytime use and the nighttime use?
what we have, the last time around when we have presented, we had proposed to have, we have 6 apartments, we have 6 parking spaces reserved. The discussion was that probably was gonna be not counterproductive, because then if somebody needs a parking space during the day and it's not, and it's being reserved, it's better off to leave it all empty and allowed to be used. And also now, since there is no reduction in the parking, before we were asking the board to reduce the number of parking spaces, we were required. And now we're saying we have 20 parking spaces, and we have retail and a number of units that is zoning compliant, bulk regulations with 20, with that.
Jamie, what's the space between the parking spaces on this building and that building? Can a truck go back and forth in that space there
Yes.
safely?
Yes, there is a, right now, this is the way it's being used, and there is the center 2 lines there is an easement that has been in place for a long time, that, since these 2 buildings have been in place. And you have, well, we showed the landscaping, and that's the floor plan, that's the lower level, so that's how we are demonstrating that we are connecting now. There will be an entrance from the front, there will be a retail store, and also we keep in the market. So you will be walking from Campwood, there will be a long hallway connecting to the back, and we have an elevator and the stairs connecting to the remaining floors.
I was looking at the elevation, it's a little confusing, I think, when you're looking at it, that you have two entrances that look like they should do the same thing. So you have the northern entrance to the supermarket, and then you'll have the center door being the entrance to the apartments, and then you have the tiny door to the upholstery.
Right. Well, we have two main uses for this building, and that's the residential and the market. The other retail space is very small, and we feel that the emphasis of the elevation should be on the two main uses, and we have the small door to the side.
Right, but then if you don't know the building, is it going to be clear whether you're going to the supermarket or whether you're going into the apartments?
Well, we have signage, and there will be a signage that refers to the residential.
So you can't access the residential through the door further to the right? That's right.
No, that's for the market.
It's just gonna be for the supermarket.
Right. And that's going to be for the residential, and the small door is for the little retail space that he has left.
And the first set of windows on the south side, that's gonna be part of the lobby.
Yes,
And the other two windows are gonna be part of the supermarket.
yes.
All right, so,
I'm just going to make sure.
is that right? Yes.
Yes.
So visually, it's gonna be very clear. Are you going to permit, or are we going to permit that there's gonna be shelving in the windows, like many supermarkets have? Or are we going to require that the windows will be kept clear?
We actually don't have, our restriction in the village is in terms of signage in windows, not in terms of shelving in windows. And you can only, as you know, have basically like a quarter of the window can
Yes, I believe
essentially
it's
be covered up.
25%.
So we don't really have something specifically that relates to shelving that would be there, but if they were to put anything that would potentially cover a portion of the window, that would then be in violation of the sign provisions that we have in our zoning code.
So, and to the point, we're really, right now we're on site plan. I'm assuming we're gonna have a better, I know sometimes these things have an overlap, and we want to talking about
That's what
some
I think it
architecture.
does
This
have
is-
an overlap.
Are we,
If
I
it's in
think,
both, I think,
I think we could certainly, drill down on the site plan issues tonight. I don't think we're ready to really go anywhere with architecture, because obviously it's not even on the BR agenda.
okay, I thought it was both, I thought it was both
I don't-
combined.
I don't see it.
I don't see it on here, so that's why, for clarification, I think site plan, and I think the focus is site plan. Again, the board's ready to move on that, great, but, I think, let's get through that, and then we'll figure out, where we are
Okay.
next.
So basically what we're discussing and deciding on tonight is the parking and the fact that the no sidewalk, was this a sidewalk there last
Right.
time? Yeah.
That's
But
eliminated.
if you don't, if you have I prefer to, if there's any comments with architecture, I prefer to address those as well.
Could I,
Yeah.
maybe I'm missing it, and maybe this is not part of the site plan approval, but this is probably more architectural, but is there an area for mail pickup and things in the apartment? I don't see like
We can probably allocate something that in the hallway.
I mean,
We
there
have
are mailboxes?
Yeah, there will be, we have plenty of room in the hallway to have mailboxes there. Yes.
So JB, you've got some lighting off the building that I guess shines on the parking lot. There's also bollards, I guess, around.
Yeah. So we have lighting, and we have the landscaping as well, that we have provided enough landscaping. We have added landscaping as, to create a bigger buffer to the existing trees at the rear, but we have added plenty, a variation of landscaping as well.
It looks like these are lower light kind of lower
Yes.
set lights, not gonna cast out onto the
Right.
adjoining properties, are they all gonna be directed toward the structure? Is that
Yes.
the thinking?
Yes, and also we will have, I think as part of our construction document, we have to provide the photometrics, not topographic, photometrics for the lights to make sure that they don't go above beyond the property line. Usually that's what we do when we provide a construction document.
So with the refuse area, is that gonna be a shared refuse area between the
No, there are
apartments
two, oh,
and the
yes.
commercial use?
Yes.
So they'll be
Actually,
shared?
there is a, I believe right now there is, let's pick up by the village, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, do we, I mean, I don't know, do we have the same refusal pickup by the village for commercial and for residential, or
Typically, any of these newer
Yeah, same.
developments would do,
their own?
on the new construction, they would have private
Yeah.
carter come in
Right.
to serve the new portion of what's getting built. I mean, this is kind of unique because it's a repurposing, if you will, of the building. But that might be something we want to talk about a little bit, maybe, commercial, a private carter would,
For
take
the
care of all the trash
residential?
there.
Right now, same.
No, the question if we are willing to have a private for the residential part.
I mean, there's an impact to the building, if that's something to think about.
Right, I mean, that's,
Typically,
they will probably want to address that, right?
Yeah.
Public Works?
I have to check I'll check the village engineer, because they would be the ones responsible for ultimately making that determination.
I mean, I think we're gonna start to see more and more of this, where you have an existing building that might have village trash pickup, but,
Now
it's
you're
gonna
modifying
be-
the building,
there's
so-
a modification, more intense use, more trash being generated, certainly an impact to the village, so.
We may have to include that as a condition in any site plan approval, so that would be something I'd prefer to discuss with the engineer to see exactly what his input would be on that.
You said there wouldn't be reserved parking, but I'm looking at the proposed signage. So are you going to have signs that say reserved parking for tenants only, or?
Well, the signage here, we're trying to maintain some of this parking. So it was not so much for the tenants of the building or that they use in the store. It's more because there's a
Right,
general
that
use
would
of
be
the
for-
area. So they're trying to,
So you're saying this reserved, that would be for the residential tenants?
yes,
So, but the parking alongside the building would be
Yes.
open to anybody who's
Yeah.
coming to the store
right.
or going to the drive-thru?
I think it was more oriented towards preventing people from other buildings or down the street to come and use the,
Right.
like they do now.
What are the hours of the market right now?
6 a.m. to 10:30.
10 PM, you said?
Yeah.
I mean, would you characterize the later hours as a busy time, or?
No, usually that's on the
That's slow. After 7:30.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Javed Iqbal. Like after 7:30, when the Laro closed, I mean, the numbers draw 7:30. So after that is like that.
So, if, let's say, there are tenants who would like to park in the customer parking only area after hours, I mean, is that something that, I mean, who's going to
Yeah.
police this? And that's what I'm trying to say, is there gonna be any,
Again, when the intent of the signage, it wasn't for either people in the market or the tenants for the building, it was for outside
For outside.
users. And that's,
Anyone else have any questions with regard to the site plan, or? Open it up to the public if anyone's here to speak to this application. So I guess for a procedural standpoint, there are some issues that probably we need to kind of think through, like this trash refuse
Yes.
pickup.
We need to check with that, yes.
I mean, parking seems like we've kind of got to a point where it's definitely improved upon the first or second presentation. I'm just thinking out loud, lighting seems to be adequate, I mean,
A little low, but,
okay.
yeah.
But I think JB said he'll give us a photometric study.
Yeah.
That's part of the,
Yeah.
when we submit for construction document, usually that's.
Any lighting on the building in the front? I mean, nothing on the ground or anything,
No.
whatever lighting is in the front will be
Right.
part of the structure.
Yes. And I don't think legally we can have lighting that goes beyond the property line, so that's. I mean, if the only item we have left is the garbage removal, I mean, can we move forward then with the condition on the,
What's the pleasure of the board? I mean, if
You
you
guys
guys have any issues
satisfied
with
with parking issues in my mind, last meeting.
Did we do the architectural review already?
We have it, and it's not on the agenda, so we're not gonna act on the architectural thing.
Oh, so we
BR's
would
a
just be
separate-
acting on the
right,
site
This would be
plan.
site plan,
And we
right,
have
that's the only thing
another-
we're considering.
We have another opportunity
Yeah.
to
Yes.
discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where I think it would be nice if you can detail some of the things about, where's the bank of mailboxes going to be.
Sure.
Just a little bit more about the access and the flow through the building, especially now that you've created that new
Okay.
section.
We can deal with the signage issue. with the
And we can
shelving
deal
and
with the
that-
signage
yes,
issues,
that would-
yeah.
that can
That'd
come
be
with
great,
that.
yeah.
Okay. Were there anything from staff? I mean, you guys have any other issues with this, or?
I did not, and as I said, I think, and it was suggested, it could be as a condition of approval. We've often put that in with regard to refuse pickup, and so that can, as I said, I'll speak with the village engineer, but we can put that in as part of our conditions and along with our standard conditions.
Now, Brian's not here tonight, were there any engineering concerns with this, or did we address those? So that's,
there is, I guess we had the discussion before, there is no, since we're not increasing the impervious area, actually we're reducing the amount of impervious area, there is no seeker, there's
It's
no
a type 2,
stormwater.
so it's categorically exempt.
anyone else? All right, so I'll basically call for a motion to approve, subject to us resolving the issue with refuse, and if there's anything else that comes up that, we can think of.
All right, motion to approve.
Jesus, a second?
Second?
Aye. All in favor? Aye. Thanks.
Just, I have to do anything to the house and the
Repeat application.
Okay.
Okay. So Ossining Children's Center, 32 State Street.
And Mr. Chair, just before the applicant approaches, just so it's clear where we are, there was a negative declaration voted at the last meeting. There was a site plan approval voted at the last meeting. So what I will...
We closed the public hearing.
We closed the public hearing. There was a vote by the board with regard to both. What there was no vote on was the BAR. That was open. But I will have a resolution with regard to what we did last month. I apologize for some, things got a little hectic. But,
Yeah, no, because I remember we closed the public hearing.
we did close it, and then we ultimately voted, and we did the neg deck, and we also did the site plan. So I think what's really here is primarily BAR tonight, unless there's anything else the applicant has.
Gentlemen, you have anything to add to that, or?
Eric Kyer, KGD Architects, for the record, here with Howard Milberg, who's the executive director. We understood that this evening was going to be responding to questions related to the resolution. We believe that the architectural BAR has been reviewed on a couple occasions and completed.
So we'll pull up the plans and just maybe.
Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Final peek at them, and we'll probably make a motion to vote on this. All the traffic issues were resolved over the last few months. The gentleman from the school district
Yes.
spoke to the the staging and the traffic.
We had a
flow
submission
across
on
the-
that, we've also gotten copies of lease agreements, so all that has been laid out.
Yeah, the parking spots, so.
Right.
And all the vegetation got approved by EAC, right? Oh, wait,
EAC was a, yes, yeah, that's right, because this didn't appear before
They-
EAC.
yeah,
No,
they went
HHC,
through-
This was fine.
Yeah, and HPC, right, yeah.
No, they were fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, nothing's changed on the architecture since.
No.
No.
I just don't think we took a vote on it.
We
That's
just
right.
didn't vote, yeah.
That's the one last time. Any questions from the members of the board? Okay. Anyone questions from the public to speak to this? Okay. So no questions, so I'm going to call for a motion to approve the BAR.
Motion to approve it.
Jesus, you have a second? Michael, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great.
Mr. Chairman, what I'll try to do, because I wanted to have the resolution for everyone, is if we do have some get-together before the 26th of March, I'll have those resolutions for this board to review, so that perhaps they can get signed off, so that way we can move this even quicker for the applicant.
Do we need to attend the 26th meeting?
No, because all they'll be doing is approving the resolution anyway. I'm hopeful to get the resolution to them before that date.
Okay, so if there's any issues, you'll let us know.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along, Louis Morgado, 45 Cedar Lane, 21-18.
And this,
He's got like the exclusive franchise here.
I think this project that, the last time we went with the board and we had, there was not many questions from the board. We did show that we're creating two retaining wall system, two-tier system around the property, which we have provided landscaping for it. And this is, I think we also towards the end of the package, you're gonna see some pictures, very similar to some of the properties, the adjacent properties. Also, what we have done this time, we provided
This
a,
isn't DNR, so
but we did have, though, even though the board had requested a 3D so they can understand how we were doing the roof and the building mass. So we have provided, so we have a metal roof and a stucco, and the base is going to be stone. And you can tell how we're doing that we have the parking underneath the building as well. And as per, I think that the you can leave with the pictures.
JB, how many units here again?
It's
Residential units?
total 8 units.
8.
8 units. And we have the bakery downstairs. And the pictures, I think, if board members are familiar with the property, I believe these pictures do a better justice to seeing all the green on it. And also, you can tell the adjacent properties, the retaining walls, where we're trying to soften that look a little bit, and that's what we have, the two-tier wall with a planter in between. Because the wall height is about the same as that one that you see on the
So
on
what
the
we
picture.
would see at your site would essentially be the same height, but you're going to break this in half?
Right.
Creating a
Yes, and
planter or
and we have
terrace?
a planter in the front.
That's a nice idea.
Good. One curb cut? and then
One
she has
curb
the-
cut. This plan is basically, is one curb cut. We meet all the zoning compliance and,
Have you already submitted to DOT an application, or?
we are in the process of working with them, but we don't foresee any issues with having one curb cut in that area. So we're gonna have the typical no left turn.
spaces?
We have 18 parking spaces.
18?
Yes,
And so that will be for both residential and the
and,
business?
yes, and that's sufficient.
And the same question with refuse, I think, you know, again, anything new would be, we probably desire to have private carting handle this as to not burden the DPW any further, so it's
Okay. I think
probably gonna be
that's-
conditional approval. And affordable units, JB, remind me of,
This is gonna be 10%, so we run it at 1. So total 8 units and one of them is affordable. And the downstairs is gonna be the bakery, and there's gonna be a small office.
comments from the board?
There's only gonna be one commercial spot?
Yes.
That's it.
Well, it's, the office is for, because it's gonna be family.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Morgano's wife will own the bakery. He will have an office in the back.
JB, again, the lighting is similar to what you just proposed in your previous application. We're gonna have, what, bollards along?
Yes.
And these are gonna be what?
When we found out that with bollards, they do the job, they provide safety, and it's an easy way of controlling the lighting, not shining on the neighbor's property.
So essentially, these be about 3 feet from the
Yeah.
finished grade? Okay, again, probably give us a photometric
Yep.
study too, so we can kind of have that in file. Questions? Again, remind me if there's anything from the engineer, and was any,
This is, it's an unlisted action, so you just have to determine significance, and then you can approve it.
any other questions, or? Anyone here from the public to speak to this application? Okay, so that being said, I think we'll need a motion to make a secret determination of negative declaration of unlisted action. So we have a motion.
A motion for the next day?
Or, great, Kaya?
I
Get a second? Robert? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. So next thing is we need a motion for site plan approval. With the conditions that were discussed earlier about trash and lighting study and.
Correct.
Any other things that are open.
Motion for site plan approval?
Robert, can I get a second? Jesus? All in favor? Aye.
And that will also include our provisions with regard to affordable housing.
Yep.
With regard to the unit.
And then we'll see you back here next month for BAR.
Yeah, for both
And,
projects. Okay, yeah. And I will, there's other things I need to do anything until we have qualification, to make sure we have.
Right.
Okay.
I'll check that. For the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think both of these previous application, this application has some overlap. We could dive into the, the units and how they're laid out and all that. Sure. That's totally.
Is any of this new development going on affected by the consortium of natural gas? We kind of moratorium on it?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there'll be issues. The applicants, I'm sure if they're aware of this, the professionals have told them that there's a moratorium, so.
And it's
March
going
March
forward.
15th, they've got to get their.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because if we give an approval, I think it's good for a year, site plan approval?
This approval, as long as they pull a building permit within that
All
year.
the
So-
approvals have to be in before the end of March, right?
The applications for Con Ed have to be in by March 15th.
Right.
For any, gas connections.
But this could be a problem going forward, because if, they're applying for gas service, which I assume most of these projects are gonna be served by gas, there'll probably be delays, so we could potentially down the road be seeing them come back for an extension of site plan, because maybe they have.
Or a revision to site plan,
Yeah.
potentially, or revision.
I mean, yeah, when you're talking about a bakery, it's a big cost to go from gas to something else.
And you're not gonna wanna subdivide oil heat for your tenants, that's a way to do a rub program, put a cost onto them?
Yeah, then you're talking about a completely different heating system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think the final application tonight is Gallegos, 61 Ferris Place.
Actually, we're gonna, after that, we go back to Mariondale.
Oh, no.
And we have a public hearing, but they know.
We have a public hearing, and we push that to the end.
Good evening. My name is Robert Roselli. I'm the engineer representing the owner. And basically, he just looking to put up a new retaining wall, add a parking space. He was operating without any building permits, and he was stopped by the building department. And so that's why I'm here for an excavation permit.
So how much of what we're looking at here already exists now?
Just about most of it. I mean, I highlighted here, I mean, if you can't see it, just, the wall is there, he's just pushing it out, the existing wall, and then he's building over like a gravel area. He's just building that up, bringing it to coincident with the rest of the driveway, and creating new parking space. Access steps up to the new parking area. New guardrail along the length of the wall, and I couldn't find any specific stormwater requirements that applied to a project of this size, but I threw a couple storm tank chambers in there anyway. And that's just about everything.
Questions from the board?
Is this behind a residential property? I just am not clear.
Yes, it's a two-family residence.
Oh.
It's down in the back.
I see. Oh, okay.
Being that it's done, did you bring fill in, or was this simply fill trucked out of?
He had just started constructing a new wall, so any fill was brought in, it's an insignificant amount, but fill will have to be brought in for this section, this main section up here, to bring it up to grade, with the rest of the driveway.
So one of the big issues in previous cut and fill projects was whatever you bring in has to be certified that there's no contaminants in it.
Sure.
So, I'm glad to hear that you didn't bring anything in.
Not that I mean, it was just, there's some block here, maybe some gravel, but nothing that I
So
saw.
again, any fill, topsoil, whatever's brought in, it has to be certified that,
Right.
it's clean, no contaminants.
Sure.
Not that you got it from some guy doing a job somewhere else and you
Sure.
need to get rid of, a couple thousand yards of fill.
Sure. Okay. That's the area that I was talking about. That's gonna be cleaned up, and that's gonna be built up and be coincident with the rest of the driveway. That's the.
Gonna build up.
Yeah, there's about 5 or 6 feet. That's where most of the fill will be imported. That's where it's going. So the whole driveway is gonna be. That's the new wall that was starting to be built. He was stopped by the building inspector. First couple of courses there. That's the existing driveway.
Questions, comments?
So you have a fence to the side there? Is that gonna be a wall as well?
You talking about on the photo, the
On the
green?
left.
No, that'll remain. Yeah, I mean, the wall will be built maybe a foot inside the property line, just to give them some leeway for construction, but that fence will probably remain.
And that's the neighbor's fence?
According to the survey, it's just a little bit onto this property, but
So why keep it? You're gonna have all kinds of things starting to grow between that fence and the wall, and you're gonna have trees eventually, roots penetrating, so why are you not getting rid of that?
okay, I mean, yeah, we can get rid of it. That's no
Sort of
problem.
attractive nuisance, a chain link fence up against.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure,
it's-
okay, I mean, we'll get rid of it. I guess I didn't,
I would suggest that.
okay.
Were there variances needed for this at all? Because, being that it's, what's the standard? Is it 2 feet off of the property line, or?
it should be.
I think it's on the property
I
line.
don't think there is an
It's
offset,
more
I
than
don't think
6
there is
feet.
an offset for.
You don't need an offset if it's less than 6 feet. But you may have to get an approval for a concrete wall.
Right, I think if it's over 5 feet, there's, you know, obviously the gentleman's an engineer, so it requires a stamp on it.
Yeah, I handed in calculations with the submission, so whoever reviews that.
I think that's part of the reason that the work was stopped.
Okay. We have a detail on the block where it's comfortable with that. Essentially, what's that, a unilock?
No, it's a concrete masonry block, cinder block wall. And there will be, you know, he does want to put there's a new fence going around the back, you know, new white vinyl fence.
That was far from the area. So that's not a
Okay. So are we good on the setback, or we?
I don't, yeah, I mean, I'm looking, the S75, his rear yard setback is, I apologize, 30 feet. He's got to have a 30-foot setback there. So minimum side yard for both combined is 28 feet. One side must be 12 feet. Front yard, we're not in the front yard, so that's not the issue. But minimum rear would be 30, so, Rob, I'm just not looking at it, and I don't read those too well. That may be one question as to whether a variance may potentially be needed for that.
I think it's 4 foot for.
Well, the 4 foot is driveway, so in other words, you can't, you have to have a buffer of 4 feet from the edge of the property to the driveway. So if in fact here, he's bumping up against the property line, or within that 4 feet, he would need a variance from the zoning board of appeals with regard to the, with regard to the driveway. So,
So is that the case here?
Well,
that's, yeah.
The driveway, I mean, well, the driveway coming down, this is existing, right? And then there's already an existing driveway there. I mean, in that area, I mean, that low area that we're filling in, I mean, I don't know what we classify that as. I'm looking at this as pre-existing, but, or if that's not acceptable, I can, you know, we can move it into 4 feet.
Well, I think if you're actually putting it in, Rob, it's probably not going to be pre-existing at that point, because you're actually filling that in there, so either if it's within 4 feet, you're going to need the variance. If you can move it that it's outside 4 feet, then you don't need the variance. Then it's the only issue is as to the rear setback in terms of, what I said, I think it was 30 feet. So that's.
Which it, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
not able to scale this, but it looks like.
Looks like we're okay.
You seem like you have enough.
Yeah, so it's really more the 4 feet, so if you can get it within, you know, outside the 4 feet, then there's no need to go before the zoning board.
Yeah, and that'll save you time, you know, rather than go to the zoning board and have to come
Sure.
back here, so.
Sure, no,
It's
I'm
to your
sure.
benefit to scale that down a little bit,
Sure.
so it's compliant.
Okay, well, let me just be clear on, so basically the 4 feet, so this coming down, I mean, let's call it the driveway side of the house, the left side of the house as you're looking at it from the road, I mean, that's existing, yeah, coming down there, I mean, that's already there, I mean, we don't need to worry about the 4 feet, I mean, obviously the driveway on the side of the house is existing, you can't, I mean, it gets any narrower, you're not gonna be able to fit any cars down there, so once you get behind the house, I mean, does the 4 feet apply to both sides, or is it just the one side on the top that?
It deals with wherever, and I'll give you the exact wording. I agree with you as to what's coming off off the road there. That's pre-existing, so you would not require anything with regard to that. Yeah, I got it right here, just my fingers are not moving as fast.
And again, all the new work is behind the house, but.
Okay, so, I guess.
But I'll just so you know what we got here. All driveways, blacktop, or loading docks must be at least 4 feet away from the property line in residential districts. So it's actually both sides of the, so either side, if either side is within 4 feet, you'd need a variance on the particular side. So the 4 foot is applicable throughout, and that applies to all the single-family zones. So that's section 270-30A3. So it must be at least 4 feet away from the property line in residential districts.
But the current carport is also existing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that is not.
I would call that all pre-existing
Yes.
non-conforming. I just think what we're putting in new,
Yeah.
to that extent, if it's considered to be a driveway, that would require that it come, either if it's outside the 4 feet, you're fine. If it's within the 4 feet, you gotta go to ZBA.
And there's gonna be an issue of coverage as well, right?
What?
Impervious
Oh, the
surface.
impervious
Impervious
service?
coverage, we're gonna have that. Because if it's all gonna, is it all going to be blacktop?
Yes, but I, according, in the village code, when I looked into that, I mean, the area, we're not creating any new impervious area, because the area where that new section is, that's basically packed gravel. I mean, as you can see from the photograph, and that's defined as impervious in the zoning code. So that's why, I'm saying that, it's.
But you may be non-conforming anyway. If you're starting something new, you may be non-conforming on a number of other areas that you have to comply with or get a variance for.
But.
So whether you say there's impervious area in the back, but if you're building that wall and you're creating something new, you may have to, the zoning, I mean, we've gone through that with a couple of places.
Well, yeah, Rob, you and I can chat offline about this, because the one concern is also that you can't make the non-conforming greater. So effectively, and I'm not saying you are, but it's just, one of the things we have in our code. What I think is that this board, if it chose to, could vote to approve, subject to any determination that might be required by the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah.
And I think that would be fine. And then you and I can chat offline as to whether or not that would be, what if anything would be needed from the ZBA. You can do it, but this board can certainly approve this subject to that, because the fact is they're just granting the excavation and fill from this end. So that is not going to be. What I'm saying is, it's not conditioned upon the ZBA, but you may need, based upon what you're doing, to go to the ZBA, but this board can certainly grant their excavation and fill if they choose to do that tonight.
Okay, so this question would be more for the ZBA, so in other words, can we talk after the meeting now, or?
Well, we can talk, and with the planner as well, so that we can figure that out. But
not tonight.
This board's perspective, we can do this.
Call tomorrow and, arrange for a time to review your application further.
Okay.
And then again, the only thing I could, strongly suggest is, if you do bring in fill, it has to be clean. You have to be able to document where it originated from, the contamination, that it shouldn't have any contamination, but just make sure you do that, because we've had problems in the past. It's been, I got fill from some guy, but we don't know where it came from. We don't want to go down that road.
Sure. I think I have a note on there, but if not, because I had a previous approval that came up, so I think I just left a note on there, but if not, I'll make sure it gets on there.
Anyone here from the public to talk to this? Okay, that being said, do we feel comfortable moving ahead with the motion and the approval based on what Stuart just mentioned about working out the detail with the zoning board if need be?
Yeah, I'll make a motion with the condition that if the wall stays in that configuration of less than 4 feet from the existing fence, that the fence gets taken down.
Okay.
In that spread where the wall will be.
Okay.
Have a second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so where are we with what's left open, guys?
We have Mariondale,
Okay.
and then we have the public hearing.
All right, well, let's take care of Marindale. I don't think there's much left with that.
Mike Molinelli, back again. Again, I'll throw it over to questions. The small building.
Just one thing, Mr. Chair, if I can mention, is we are west of Route 9, so this would require an EAC referral for completeness sake. And Mr. Molinelli, let me just ask you one question, and I apologize. In the stormwater permit application, you checked off box 2. Is there supposed to be a SWIP for this particular project?
Well, There's no particular stormwater danger other than
Okay.
we're making sure we don't add to any net runoff. But we're,
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I know what our application says is that if any of the boxes in 1 or 2 are checked off, please submit a SWIP. So I didn't want
Okay,
to
I'm
make
sorry.
sure that we were missing something, if
Sure.
there's something to be submitted, so.
Yeah.
we did address the issue of additional impermeable surface.
Okay.
But we are compensating because we've removed some other impermeable surface.
Gotcha.
So there's net more permeable surface on the site.
So, any other questions from the board regarding the site plan issues? Not that the site plan's on here tonight, but I'm assuming we're gonna act on site plan?
You could act, yeah, then we have BAR.
As we're listed for both.
You're
BAR and
you're
site
listed for
plan.
both. You could act on site plan with the condition that, again, it has to go to the EAC just for referral. But you can act on both BAR and site plan tonight if you choose to, sure.
Any other comments on the board? Comments from the public? Okay, so call for a motion for site plan approval, subject to a referral to the EAC. We could have a motion.
Motion approved, subject to.
Okay, second, Jesus. All in favor?
Right.
Great. Okay, so then we'll jump back to BAR. Again, I'd like to have a motion to approve based on what was submitted.
Motion to approve.
Mike, Michael? Jesus?
Yes, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried.
Thank you very much.
All right, last but not least, 34 State Street, I think?
Yes.
Austin Lamb.
Good evening. My name is Annie Klein. I'm an associate at Dell, Donnell, and Weingarten, Morrison, Whitaker, and White Plains. I'm here tonight on behalf of Austining Land LLC. This is an application for reinstatement of the conditional use permit and site plan approval for the project known as Hudson Step. Ed Vogel from Warschauer, Melissa Warschauer, the architect, is here with me tonight as well. So at the last meeting, we briefly discussed the environmental process that the project went through. It went through a full EIS and findings process, and that was adopted by the Planning Board as lead agency in October of 2014. In circumstances where a project needs further consideration and nothing has changed, it is appropriate for the Planning Board to issue a supplemental finding statement. So this is specifically allowed under the regulations, and in our case, we are proposing the exact same project that was approved. So we are proposing that you adopt a supplemental findings statement that just states that there are no changes to the project and that no additional environmental review is required. We discussed this in detail with staff, and I think we've all agreed that this is the best option. I just wanted to take a minute to go over some of the previous conditions of approval from the February 3rd, 2015 Planning Board resolution, which originally granted the conditional use permit and site plan approval. So just going over a few. So condition F, we had requested combined parking spaces for the residential and office use of the Smith Robinson House. So we're just requesting that again. The planning board found that, determined that we qualified for the combined parking. Also condition G was the waiver of the building length under section 270-19F2. This is to protect view corridors, and it was determined in the environmental process that this site is not in a view corridor, so we are requesting that you grant that waiver again. Condition I required a payment of $189,900 in lieu of open space and recreation facilities. $90,000 of that was paid pursuant to a prior approval, and the applicant was required to pay the rest, and we are fine with that. We are fine with all of the previous conditions. I just wanted to go over and just update you on some because I know the engineer was here last month and I just wanted to clarify a few things. Condition J, I know this came up earlier tonight, we have agreed to use a private garbage carting service. And then condition K is relating to the density bonus that we are requesting under the planned waterfront special permit that's before the Board of Trustees. So basically, we are providing 19 affordable units, which is 10%. We're exceeding the green building requirements. We will be LEED Gold. We are incorporating the historic preservation through the rehabilitation of the Smith Robinson House into office space. And there were several off-site improvements. So one was video inspection and necessary repairs of some sewer lines in segments that were previously agreed to with the village engineer on Hunter, State, and James Street. The water main relining was done by the village. In 2016, the applicant agreed to reimburse the village in the amount of $192,500, and that was to be paid before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, and we agreed to uphold that reimbursement. And then there were some streetscape improvements. Sidewalks are going to be constructed on both sides of Hunter Street, and then some formal crosswalks will be installed on Hunter near the Seeker Road intersection. So Ed is here to go into any specific details on those off-site improvements. We're here to answer any more questions that you have. And we just ask that, well, we're hoping that you will send a positive recommendation to the Board of Trustees on the planned waterfront special permit. They referred that to you last month. And that you close the public hearing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So a couple questions I have. You'd mentioned this $192,000 for the water relining. You're saying that's going to be paid upon issuance of CO? Or
Prior to. So that would be a condition of getting the certificate of occupancy is that we have to pay this.
My understanding is the work's been done.
Yeah, the village completed the work. And so there was a whole agreement that my client signed back in 2016 that was specifically to reimburse the village on this agreed upon amount.
Why not reimburse us now if the work's already done?
Well, we need these approvals first to get the financing, so.
Okay. I mean, the other concern I think that's been brought to some of our attention is, I guess, there's quite a few open violations on the site. And I didn't hear any discussion about that, addressing some of those issues and, you know, where we are with kind of dealing with those open violations.
So last month, we cleaned up the entire site. We provided pictures to Stuart, and I can provide pictures to you. Last week, we were told that there was some brush along Hunter Street that needed to be cleaned up, and it's my understanding that my client sent someone out last week to clean up that brush. I'm not aware of any other open violations.
I know that there were two matters in court this week, and I think fines were paid.
Okay.
And I think the issue with regard to the overgrowth on Hunter Street may have resulted in a recently issued order to remedy, but I did provide Ms. Klein with the photographs which were taken recently by our code enforcement officers down at that particular location. So those aspects have been done. I've also, when I spoke to Ms. Klein earlier this week, I did mention to her the recently enacted vacant building registry in the village. There are two vacant buildings on site. One is the former Printex building, the other is the Smith Robinson House, both of which would be subject to that particular ordinance, which requires both a filing with the village as well as maintenance responsibilities to the property owner. So we've discussed that, and that's something you know, that can be looked at. And that's that. I know that, and Ms. Klein also and I had some discussions along with the planning director with regard to some of the off-site improvements, so I think maybe, you know, Mr. Vogel can help us with that as well, in terms of what exactly the resolution back in 2015 called for and what was to have been done. So that's all here. You know, I don't know if the board members actually, if you have that resolution, if you would like it, we can send it to you, because it's...
I think we'll need to see it at some point.
I would think you might want to see it.
I mean, it was brought up tonight about this supplemental
Yeah,
findings.
it was, we submitted it with our application.
Okay, thank you.
Man, from a procedural standpoint, I don't know tonight, I mean, obviously, this is sort of a new twist to this, the supplemental findings. I mean, because as far as, for all the years I've been here, we've really never gone back and opened up a secret process again, so this is kind of another unique
This is something the planning director and I have talked about. The applicant has indicated this is effectively the identical application to before, and as Ms. Klein pointed out, the issue is that the timing for those applications all expired. So, under the secret regulations, there is a supplemental finding. There would not need to be another lead agency declaration. You have the finding statement, and if you don't, you know, it's fairly lengthy, it's about 35, 40 pages. And this would just supplement that, and it would still be the same declaration as before. I believe it was previously an unlisted action with a positive declaration at that point. So that's what this would be, but, you know, you're right, it's different than before, rather than having to, in essence, restart the entire process.
So in essence, the supplemental findings would just go back and get tied into the final EIS, I guess, that we adopted 4 or 5 years ago.
Right, and the final finding and the supplemental finding statement would have appended to it the finding statement from before, so that you're basically readopting what was done, and you know, sort of reapproving, you know, the FEIS, which came out of this board back in 2014, I think. So that's sort of the process that we've been talking about as to perhaps the best way to get this done, because it will still have to go before Zoning Board of Appeals, as there are a number of variances that are being requested, and will go before the Board of Trustees, because they have the special waterfront permit that they're asking for.
So
Does it have to go before HPC again?
It does not. However, another thing that Ms. Klein and I spoke about is, even though there is a certificate of appropriateness that was granted, that was back in 2014, you know, my recommendation would be that there be communication between the applicant and HPC to have someone get into the Smith Robinson house to see what the condition is. There was a great deal in the HPC certificate of appropriateness as to what needed to be done, and it was a very transparent procedure with regard to this project. So I want to, you know, I know Ms. Klein's firm wasn't involved at that point, but it was very open. But we don't know the condition of the property right now, and I think that's critical to know. The code does have a provision under 27025K dealing with maintenance of landmark properties. You don't obviously want to have, you know, demolition by neglect. You don't want to have any of those issues. So that's something that I think should be, you know, a communication between HPC and the applicant in that regard. But in terms of a certificate of appropriateness, that's been granted, and there is nothing in our code that times that out. So that is still in full force and effect.
In essence, the only thing that's really on a clock is the original, the site plan approval and...
The site plan approval, the variances, and the Board of Trustees approval for the waterfront special use permit. Those three expired, but the EAC approval from before and the HPC approval from before are still good.
And the BAR.
And the that's a good question, the BAR.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for raising that for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Because I
that.
think that's where, you know, that's where.
Well, BAR comes partially into site plan as well. I mean, so effectively, but you're right. If it was a separate BAR, I'd have to actually check.
I think we crossed this path over the years. I think BAR has never had in the past
a time
limit.
Right.
It was only site plan, so.
I mean, and I know that when I was in the HPC at the time, we spent a lot of time, not only with the Smith Robinson house, but also how the adjoining architecture was going to fit in. So at least I know from from the HPC, we were very thorough
Right.
from that end.
Well, the hour's getting late, so why don't we
Yeah.
kind of do a quick walkthrough of the architecture, your architects here, let's kind of close the loop and see where we need to go from here.
Okay, I heard two things. Hi, Ed Vogel, WW Architects. I heard two things tonight. One was, thank you for going to sheet 2, is to discuss the off-site improvements.
Please.
So it might be easier if I come up to the front and point to it on the screen for everybody instead of me giving very complicated directions.
Yeah.
One of the issues here with this was that we kept it sort of on the grades, but you look at the streets, really low to the ground.
So this is from our master site plan, and we put the off-site improvements on here, and that's what Ms. Klein was referring to. So there's a number of them. One of them is going to be sidewalk pedestrian improvements. So the heavy line, as we see working down on Secor, on Hunter, on both sides, and then there's one crosswalk, and then there's a second crosswalk to help neighborhood people work their way down into the train station and then back up. The other place that there's sidewalk improvements is along James. It's running along this segment. We have already committed to doing sidewalk improvements along State Street. The second piece in here that we want to focus on is you can see the quick dashes as they work their way down, and they go from circle to circle. This is a sewer line. This is video inspection and any necessary repairs. That happens on a segment on State Street. It happens on a segment, thank you, on James. And it happens on a segment on Hunter as it works its way up.
So what is the flow? Which direction does the flow from this project travel? Are there multiple connections, or are we talking about one sewer connection?
I don't know that. I do know it, but I don't have that answer with me, right? It's part of the site engineering drawings. I didn't go through that for this meeting. There are going to be multiple connections, probably on all 3 properties, all 3 streets. Because this building 2 and 2A and 2B do reside lower, and they're going to flow down to Hunter. Building 3 will most likely come to James, and then building 1 would then work its way to State Street. That's just the sense I have off the site. Okay, the next piece that we have here is the proposed water main relining, which the village has already performed. That's this heavy dash. So that comes all the way over here from Main, and it's working its way down to the edge of the property. And then if we come up on James a little bit, we can see that happening as well. Through here as it works its way down. And that was already explained that there'd be a fee in lieu of doing that work. The last item in here that we want to speak about, which I'd like to clarify. Mr. Cremelli mentioned an off-site improvement regarding stairs on a triangular parcel of property. That was initially offered and discussed here at the board, but staff, in particular engineering and DPW, didn't particularly like that as an offering, and they changed that. The offering here now that is now adopted is at the cul-de-sac of James. There is a kind of it's a paper street, and people use this. It's quasi-improved for pedestrian access. It's not necessarily well-maintained at this point. So there is a proposed drainage and erosion control improvements that would happen in here to control the flow of water that happens now off the end of James. It is also creating a stable walking path, again, helping neighborhood travel down to the train station. There might be a little bit of a rail effort along the edge of that path.
Michael, is that what we refer to as, is that Breakneck Hill?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
And I
that's,
think, I mean, this goes back a long time. I think there was even some talk about some connection, like with a bridge or something, over, below Hunter down to, essentially, I guess that's Lower Main or Station Road. But I just.
There were a lot of
Yeah.
pieces
I mean,
spoken about helping neighborhood migrate to train station and from train station back into neighborhood. But this is the final version that was in the resolution.
It's my understanding, Ed, is there's not going to be stairs that were going to be on that hill. It's going to basically just sort of contour down.
Correct. There are no stairs.
Got it.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a natural path that exists now that people
Right.
just traverse.
Right.
So if this is an improvement to create better pedestrian, safe travel, great.
Hopefully, we can rename it so it doesn't.
It will always be called that.
So that was I guess the first part, right? And I guess the second part is, Chair, you asked for to walk through the architecture?
Yeah, I guess we could do that quickly. It sounds like, just from a procedural standpoint, we're not gonna have any final determination tonight. I think it sounds like findings would kind of, that's sort of something that,
Well, the supplemental findings would effectively be that it is the same application as before, and that there have been no changes. So unlike the lengthy finding statement, this would be fairly short. And that would then permit zoning to make its determination, and this board could ultimately make its recommendation to the BOT.
Would you like me to begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. Since this is queued up, we have the elevations here to building number 1. Building number 1 also adjoins the Smith-Robinson house. So the Smith-Robinson house is the restoration, and that is the building on the top image to the right of the screen. Building 1 then is alongside of it from plan, and it has a composition of materials that do reflect the nature of the existing building. We have a rusticated base, and that's visible down by the entry. We get to a middle section of the building which has a stucco panel, which is rough in texture. And then the very top of that is a smooth concrete panel, and it's honed. The forward projection elements are metal panel with window wall, and those are the living spaces within the units as they come forward. So, and that's similar in style to what the Smith-Robinson house has. It has a rusticated base, it has a smoother or more refined stonework in the middle piece, and it has a finer top, which would be the attic level, so to speak, of the Smith-Robinson house. That architecture is brought around to all the buildings for the new element. So we have a little bit of a juxtaposition where the new architecture is paying a little bit of homage to the existing Smith-Robinson house.
I remember, I think even that board in the back here is what was presented back in the day for some option for finishes.
you're talking about that 500-pound,
Yes, that's right. It's been sitting there
Hasn't
since,
moved in
nobody
about
wants
10
to
years.
move it. But, so I don't think there was a total sort of end result, like we are definitely gonna do this. I think there's still some feelers out, at least with the HPC. So I would sort of suggest that we, at some point, as you start progressing in actually specifying materials, more definitely, that we get a revisit.
I believe we had promised that there would be a mock-up made, and then
Right.
people could come.
That's right,
So
exactly.
that was a commitment
That's
made
correct.
by the
Now I
developer.
remember that, exactly. Yep,
So it's already there.
yep.
So, we're into building 2 here. You can see the middle image, which is very linear and thin. That is giving you the view from internal to the site as you would look toward the Hudson. So our building actually drops down from here, and that's what you see on the lower piece. So on the lower image, to the right side of the screen, is where the building is pushed slightly more forward, and we, for a variance, we ended up adding an additional story going down. But the architecture vocabulary is the same as I described for building 1.
And Ed, if my memory serves me correct, you had to stay under 180 feet. Was that from?
It's 220 feet,
220.
and that's from a further up the hill, so further to the east. All our buildings are under 220 feet. Matter of fact, we've kept buildings, in particular building 1, but actually building 3, is lower than the Smith-Robinson house. So the Smith-Robinson house has, again, the stature of importance. Here, the platform that we're looking out over is at elevation 163, which is considerably lower than the 220 elevation that the site is capped at. And then if you want to go to the next group of buildings, or the next group building, this is 3, which looks very similar to building number 1. And this sits along James Street.
That reminded me, this mechanized parking system that you have, it sits under this building?
No, it actually sits under building number 2. So it's 2B if you wanted to scroll back up.
Yeah, essentially, you propose this very automated,
We have-
state-of-the-art mechanical, robot-driven parking system.
Correct.
We spent a lot of time talking about that,
Yes.
months and months, and
We have, so.
essentially, that's kind of stayed
That
as
stayed.
a focal central point
Yes,
to your proposal.
Right. The developer, I don't want to say he doesn't like cars, but he doesn't want to see them. So, and I think most people don't want to see cars parked either. So, what has triggered, and that's why the hill and the sloping nature of the site, we've actually, there's a triangular void that sits behind building 2, which you can see in that upper right, right? You see how the 2A and B is offset. And that triangular void, and we'll show that in section a little bit, is where the parking, and the parking is actually a 3-tiered parking. So you drive at the top level into a garage. The car, you exit this garage, you go to a key, you answer some questions at a kiosk, the garage doors close. Once you've answered it properly, and the car gets dropped down into the parking tiers. And it's all done by robotics. So a sled comes, pulls it off of the elevator platform, and it starts jockeying around.
Scroll back and just show some of that entrance, which I think was kind of unique,
Sure.
that, it's very inconspicuous.
Yeah.
And it's a very automated process, and
The other way. Keep going.
we spent a lot of time talking about how this would impact it. Cars were gonna stack up in
Sure.
the parking area, and
That's right.
Very
That's
efficient.
good.
yeah. And the key was there was very minimal impact to the aesthetic and, spillover, so, that's one of the things I wrote.
You have 3 levels going down.
3 levels going down, and I'll show that in a moment. So when you look at this plan, you see like the ochre, that orange color, that's the common area. We have like a clubhouse and some elements sitting on top of our platform. And then you see the little bit of the beige out in front. It looks like a 2-bay garage, 2 deep, so you have a 4-bay is where yes, those 2 that's actually the driving apron. The next one in, you see 2 bays. We have 2 cars. And that's where the residents would then leave the car. They would come out and do a kiosk questionnaire. And there are sensors inside this bay, so you line up the car properly. If you don't line it up properly, it tells you to please adjust. Then, once the garage door closes, the interior door opens, the sled takes it to the lift drops it down. So this has the opportunity inside the garage, it turns the car around, so when you retrieve your car, it's pointing in the right direction.
Do you know any places locally that are using this kind of parking system? Or in New York City?
New York City has it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually,
Yeah.
Miami has it, and Spain has it.
I've never seen it in person.
Chicago, many
Yeah.
places, and
Yeah.
especially you can do them on the parks. It's like one of the best things to minimize,
That sounds awesome.
and you can create, a parking spot underneath the park, and yet there's very low space to get there.
I think when we talked about it years back, you'd mentioned, I think that there were some places in White Plains where, I guess, considering this, did they ever wind up?
I'm unaware if they actually put them in. We have, the technology is rapidly growing, and we also had numerous conversations with the building department as well, because they don't, at this point, we're still, it's not embodied into the building code, but that's not for us here. So, but the idea is that this technology is moving. So in the course of this project, it has gotten even better than what we have, and what we started with when we began. So it's become a very reliable, and there's backup systems. People say what happens when the power goes out, there are generators, the sleds work on batteries, the battery life is 18 hours. There's redundancy built in. We have 2 lifts in case one goes bad. There are multiple sleds that will move the cars around. So if there is maintenance, and all this stuff is wirelessly connected to a control panel sends signals, and you have remote people monitoring this. And they'll have a signal as with an elevator that you have a problem with.
I love that, the fact that the parking's hidden. It's so awesome for aesthetics.
So let's go to sheet 4, if you don't mind, and we'll talk about this triangular sliver of space that the parking will reside in.
Down?
Up.
Up.
Keep going.
Tell me when to stop.
Yeah. Right here.
Here we are.
So this is a site section, just for bearing purposes. Smith Robinson House is on the right side. You can see it sitting tall. We have the profile of building 1, and you can see the circular, or the plane that's created on our site. And we're looking out over building 2. So building 2 goes down. The hatched area, you can see the cars on the image. So, I'm sorry, there's 4 decks underneath, not 3 as I mentioned.
This is building 1.
Building 1, the profile in the background. So you can see, right, that's a good way of doing it. So we can see how the cars would be then. And then the travel aisle is where the car is not parked.
Do you have any specifications, sorry, it's late, for, like, you know, can I bring an Escalade in there?
Ah, yes, good question. This is all traffic science, I'm going to call it. We have traffic engineers that tell you how many turns people make at intersections, right? And part of that's in counts. They have studies that they know what the average car size over the spectrum of cars are. So in the design of this, 2 deck levels are taller, so they can take the larger vehicles.
Because I've seen in Spain, in Madrid, but it's all like little cars.
Yeah, so they're anticipating the ratio already into the design. We factored that in, and we provided that space.
Well, passenger cars, we're not talking about commercial trucks or vehicles.
Couldn't do
parked
that.
in them. This is all just passenger vehicles,
Correct.
not commercial vehicles.
No. And if we zoom out a little bit, we can then see the overall site plan as a key plan in here. And what hiding the parking the way it's designed really opens up the center of the site. It has opened up our green space. It has opened up, it has reduced our building coverage. It has increased pervious surfaces, so impervious is decreased. So there's a lot of benefits that with this approach. There is a cost to this. It's not cheap, and they've committed to invest in it.
So we got State Street.
That's State, correct.
This is James.
That's James.
From an orientation standpoint.
No, Hunter. No.
This
Oh,
is
Hunter's
James.
there. Hunter's over there. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we have the two curb cuts to get in.
Correct.
So we've had some issues with retaining walls.
Yes.
Recently enough.
You have.
You know, can you assure us that we're not gonna have to revisit this down the road?
I will tell you that they've looked at it, and because of the way the garage sits, and the way the walls of that work, and then the way the building resides, all of that gets linked together. And that all works as part of the retaining system. So we have a lot of opportunities to do this right. So in theory, you could look at it as 3 separate walls that are tied together.
And this is all frontage, this is dedicated public street here and on Hunter as well. So essentially, you're really not up against another property at a lower elevation. Correct. Okay. All right. Any questions from the board? If anybody left the public room.
We do actually, we do have some folks here.
We have,
Okay, oh,
we have.
How many units, total?
One, was it?
180.
189.
That's right.
189 units.
And then you have 19 that are,
10% affordable, 19 units.
okay.
Okay. So if anyone's here from the public, please come up and state your name and.
For 3.5 hours, I'm talking.
You will be the only one coming.
My name is Dana White. I reside at 24 Ellis Place. I'm the village historian. I'm also on the Historic Preservation Commission. I just want to say, I'm here holding the minutes from our HPC meeting from Monday, November 10th, 2014. That lists, that is the certificate of appropriateness that was approved on that day to restore the Smith Robinson House. And I'm sure you all have a copy of this. And it came with a lot of, descriptions of things to be done, and there was a lot of work that went into this document. Now, I think you just said they do not have to come back to the HPC for a new one? Even though it's...
No, the HPC, the certificate of appropriateness has not expired, but
Okay.
as I suggested, Dana, given the period of time that has expired, it would be my recommendation to the applicant that they communicate with the HPC specifically as to what the current condition of Smith Robinson House is. They are obligated both under the vacant building registry law of last year, as well as under the 27025, which is the HPC code, to maintain landmark buildings and to keep them, in proper shape. So that's something that clearly, I think should be done, because as far as I know, since that determination, I don't think there's been any involvement by any, certainly by the HPC since 2014.
It's been dormant for
Yeah.
several years.
Right.
Well, that is, has been a subject of increasing concern, the condition of the building over time. And I'm sure the whole HPC, should you come and talk to us about this again, is happy that you obviously are still retaining your dedication to that building. Very important. So we look forward to speaking with you and to working with you on the restoration of the building, which, as you know, is extremely significant structure built in the 1830s, one of a handful of Sing Sing marble structures that remain here in Ossining, and also built with the same convict quarried stone that was used on Lyndhurst, Grace Church, the first NYU building, the first Albany State building. And also probably, assuming the Sing Sing Prison Museum happens down the road in 10 years or whatever, hopefully not that much, 7, 8, that actually you're going to have a structure that tells the story, part of the story of that place. So it's not just saving an historic building, it's saving part of the narrative, and it's saving part of the history of our village. So thank you very much for continuing to believe in the building. We look forward, we would love to get inside it, to be quite honest with you, to document the condition it is currently in. I think over almost 4.5 years, I think there's probably been some deterioration. I guess you worked on the roof recently, right? Didn't you do some roof work on it? Was there some water? I don't know.
There has been some restoration work, and I talked to my client. They are very aware of Section 25, which is what the historic was the certificate of appropriateness was granted under, and they have told me that they have kept it maintained and sealed it off, and everything has been kept up. So I will tell them.
Okay, well, thank you. We're looking forward to saving and preserving and returning this building to its former glory. And please don't hesitate to reach out to the HPC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Howard Milbert, and I'm the Executive Director of the Ossining Children's Center. There are a number of issues that have arisen regarding the anticipated construction of the property of 34 State Street, which is to the south of the Ossining Children's Center new building. It's our hope that these items can be considered prior to their breaking ground. First, we're planning on having solar panels on top of our building, and we're therefore concerned about potential sunlight blockage given the proposed height of this new neighboring building to the south. And this is especially problematic because the elevation of this property on its northern side is 12 to 15 feet higher than ours. Because of this elevation difference, we're also very concerned about storm water runoff, both during and after construction, as well as what kind of planting will be placed adjacent to our property line. Because of these problems, we're also wondering if the owner contemplated a building plan that would be more heavily weighted to the southern property line. Further from the drop-off between our two properties, such a plan would likely avert many of the difficulties we anticipate. There are also some concerns about the effect of ongoing construction at 34 State Street once our program is up and running. Because we'll be caring for infants as young as 8 weeks, as well as children who have respiratory problems, we need to be assured that all airborne particulate matter will be contained. We'd also need for the noise level to be kept at a minimum during our working hours. Finally, the presence of dead trees and limbs near the property line pose an immediate hazard. We're therefore requesting that they be removed prior to commencing work on 34 State Street. We appreciate your consideration of these matters, and we're looking forward to working effectively with our new neighbors and our joint participation in the revitalization of State Street. I have, do you want a copy of this?
Welcome to submit it.
I have a question. To you, actually. This project was approved before you put your project up for approval. So, did you not consider that in your proposal and thoughts about where you were going to put your solar panels?
That's something that my architect, I think, I can't answer that question at this point.
So my next question is, you have a lot of property to further down. I know that electricity goes off over longer distances, but maybe some of the solar panels can be put on the lower slope. But my point is, I agree with everything you're saying, but if everything goes the way I think 34 State Street, and I can't speak for you, but you might even be under construction at the same time. So so I agree with you, as a good neighbor, one should do one or the other, but I can't really see that this is something that we, as a planning board, should be, this is a neighboring issue. It's a neighboring issue. And I think that is not something that we necessarily should be addressing.
Well, I think some of the things, if I could throw my 2 cents here, I think some of the conditions that were mentioned, the concerns were mentioned, would be kind of handled during the construction phase, like, keeping dust down, making sure that, proper procedures and whatnot are being adhered to. I mean, there is an opportunity, like Kaya said, to, have a sort of a simultaneous construction, and you guys sort of, as you do things, you work together as neighbors to come up with best solutions. When we reviewed this project originally, there was a funeral home next door. So, we reviewed it under with the fact that there was an existing structure. I don't think there was ever any issues with the adjoining neighbor. He never came out and voiced any concerns. But, you know, we're sort of, you know, we're in a new place now. So, I mean, I would think that, you know, the applicant should do as much as they can to kind of meet you guys halfway and try to work through some of these issues. I think they're here, you know, and they hear what you're saying, and I'm hoping that, you know, they're gonna be good neighbors.
We would be more than happy to work with you
Okay.
to resolve these issues.
And some of those issues, Kai, as you mentioned, are really part of the building permit process, particularly noise issues and dust
Right.
issues and things like that. So that's a matter of dealing with the building department,
Right.
because they're the ones who, you know, could put certain things in that deal with that during the course of construction, because that's when it's gonna be monitored then.
But the issue of the solar panels, I think that's
Yeah.
one thing that I think, you know, it might happen again in
Right.
a similar thing, that's one project has been
Right.
approved, another project comes and sort of have to take into account what has already been approved.
Right.
So it's like air rights, you know, site rights. So that's something that I think you have to take up with your architect and engineer as well, that sort of it's a hard thing to ask someone to move a building back or making it shorter if they already have approval, so that you can have solar panels to the south. I mean, to me, sort of goes a little too far in requests.
Has anyone done a study about a solar panel, the solar angle?
My architect, I believe, took care of all of this. But I agree with you, we do have land that slopes down towards the Hudson
Yeah.
that might be useful in this regard.
Yeah, and I think you can make a small field, and they can be an accentuator so that you don't have a loss of drop in electricity as you go up. That would be my suggestion, figure out if that's possible.
We're anticipating opening in 2020.
Okay. Really? That's
Yes.
fast.
That's the fall of 2020 for the school year. And it would be wonderful if all of the construction were done at the same time. I'm not sure what the timeline is for 34 State Street, but we will have infants and lots of children with respiratory problems.
Well, I think, you know, just this, you know, kind of sharing with, you know, the other applicant, when you want to get this, when you want to be up and running, maybe there's a way that they could phase their project, that whatever abuts your property would be dealt with first. You know, a creative solution maybe, keep the construction further away, so I think there's some room for discussion here.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so where are we?
Mr. Chair, what I would suggest, since the supplemental finding statement is something a little different than we've done before, is that I will work with Ms. Klein to basically draft one, put one together for this board, circulate it to the board in advance of the March meeting. If it's acceptable at that point, it can be approved, and then we can move on. I'd rather not have the board simply approve something without really seeing what it is.
Yeah.
So I think it would be best if we did that, and we can have that, you know, for the, you know, I'll have it to everybody before the 26th of March. They can look at it, and the board can vote at that point.
Good. Acceptable, everybody? Does that sound like a plan? Okay, great. So with that, we'll adjourn until March. Adjourn until That's it.
You just have to sign your resolution.
I'll take care of those. As far as the minutes go, we don't need to vote on those because...
Yes, as a matter of fact, just a little word for people, minutes do not have to be approved. The requirement under the open meetings law that minutes must be available 2 weeks after the meeting, but there is no requirement in any law that they actually have to be voted on.
Okay, so they're...
So they can be listed and they may be posted as in draft and if we ultimately want to approve them, you can, but it's not a requirement under New York's open meetings law.
So with that being said, I think we're pretty much done. Motion to adjourn. Thanks, Bruce. For a second?
Second, third, and
Hey, Rod, thank you.
Oh, and you know who does